Chapter 874. The exhausted Thunderball martial artist was quickly pulled to the back by his companions. In that attack he had completely exhausted the power of his law surface. However, this action of his was like a fuse that ignited the entire battlefield. Martial artists continued to rush forward and unleash their full power attacks. Luckily, the Sin domain martial artists were fighting alone. If they were proficient in armies, that would truly be troublesome. But at that moment he suddenly realized that there were too many scouts around. When the unbreakable legend revealed a crack, the hatred and bloodthirstiness hidden deep within the Sin domain martial artists erupted like a volcano. But very quickly he knew that the enemy was not weak. Colin sensed danger. His own side's morale was unstable, and if the battle situation was disadvantageous, they would most likely collapse. He was shocked. Could it be that the scouts are the enemy's true target? The dense energy caused the soldiers to cheer. It was the feeling that they were familiar with, the rhythm that they were familiar with. They started to perform crazily. All sorts of attacks were unleashed like raindrops, whizzing out from the barracks towards the stronghold. Although they did not know what methods the enemy used to cause the desolate continent's energy to become so sparse, but since it was sparse they had to increase it. Colin thought about star rocks. High-grade star rocks were not rare in the Sacred Saint Galaxy, and were usually used on warships. Colin then thought about the warship's smelting furnace. Upon testing it out, the results were extremely good. The only flaw was that it wasted star rocks. Between experts, there was always an unspeakable tacit understanding. After the continuous crazy attacks, the energy barrier started to reveal minute cracks. A Sin domain martial artist who trained in spatial laws suddenly had his eyes lit up, and his figure suddenly disappeared. They saw the hope of victory and nothing made them more excited and crazy. They suddenly realized that against the honorable martial continent's army, they did not have a chance. The countless of corpses in front of the Sin Gate had deeply ingrained the legend of the honorable martial continent into the hearts of every Sin domain person. And outside of the barracks, there were heavy guards with a thick energy barrier, preventing the enemy scouts from taking advantage of the situation. Colin used half of his military strength to set up a defensive line, creating an extremely sturdy tortoise shell. Colin had mobilized an astonishing number of star stones from the rear. As soon as the battle began, the star stones were thrown into the furnace like they were free. Colin had made ample preparations. Star stones were piled up like a mountain in the barracks. Soldiers were constantly pouring boxes after boxes of star stones into a furnace. Surging energy gushed out from the furnace. This furnace was a core component dismantled from a medium-sized warship. Its purpose was to release the energy within the star stones for the warship to use. Lunatic. Colin was a little confused. He was stunned by the scene in front of him. He had never seen such a crazy attack. He was not anxious at all, as though the army did not know fatigue. They took turns to attack. As for the star stones, he had made ample preparations. All the star stones in the warehouses, barracks, and merchant associations along the way had been seized by him. He had so many star stones that he could fight continuously for a month. The fugitive. The other party was merely relying on a sense of bravery to hold on. The Sin domain martial artist revealed a sinister smile. The blood feud with the honorable martial continent had long seeped into their blood. When the battle started, both sides had casualties. Colin's army was well trained and guarded. But in the honorable martial continent, when had there ever been such an intense battle? When had they ever seen such a terrifying enemy? Even Colin himself was shocked, much less the soldiers. Colin calmed down and prepared to give the enemy a fatal blow. That is. Colin did not even have the time to heave a sigh of relief. He suddenly realized that not only did the situation not calm down, but it became even more tense. Colin's eyes constricted. Colin's mind became vexed. But he knew that it was not the time to be vexed. The most important thing was to stabilize the situation. The enemy's frenzied and fearless attacks had a huge impact on the soldiers. Over 100 lightning balls struck onto a single point like rain. Dazzling light auras blossomed, causing the nearby soldiers to be blinded by white light. All of the Sin domain scouts outside the barracks suddenly started to attack the formation. Every small team of scouts would definitely have a powerful expert. In such a close-distance battle, Colin finally experienced the true destructive power of the Sin domain's powerful martial artists. One after another, demonic godlike figures soared into the sky, and all sorts of light auras from laws lit up the sky above the desolate continent. One of the Sin domain martial artist's eyes suddenly flashed with a fierce look. The power projected from his law surface surged forth, and over 100 watermelon-sized lightning balls suddenly appeared around him. The blue lightning balls released an extremely dangerous aura. The terrifying power of laws caused the space around them to distort. The stronghold was enveloped by Colin's army's crazy bombardment. The explosions were extremely concentrated. Colin's thoughts were simple: as long as he had enough star rocks, he could completely destroy the Sin Door stronghold bit by bit, and force the enemy to take the initiative to attack him, and by waiting for them to exhaust themselves, he could firmly grasp the initiative in the battlefield. As long as they had sufficient energy, Colin's army's training and fighting capabilities were immediately displayed. Both parties were shocked by each other's attacks. The initially frenzied Sin domain scouts became even more frenzied. In the next moment he appeared in the enemy's formation like a specter, and in that moment, 7 to 8 blood arrows flew into the sky, and a few of the soldiers' throats had extremely thin blood marks. To the rich and imposing temple, wastage was never a problem. At the start, Colin's army was extremely unfamiliar with such a strange and weird attack method, and thus suffered heavy losses. The lightning and fire rain attacks were still manageable, as the energy barrier could still block them. But for spatial laws attacks, they were extremely strange and unpredictable. The enemies were like moths flying into flames. They attacked the energy barrier without caring about anything. Some even used their bodies to strike the energy barrier. Every one of them only unleashed one attack. If it was light, they would be exhausted. If it was heavy, they would be heavily injured. Seeing the fellows who had lost their fighting capabilities being dragged away by their comrades, their faces that were covered in blood revealed maniacal smiles, which contained a bone-deep hatred, causing Colin's heart to feel a chill. Colin was the first to react and bellowed, "Kill him!" Colin quickly made a decision: defend first. Stabilize the situation. Lightning, fire, rain, squalls, spatial slashes. Their attack methods were extremely strange. They did not have any energy but had astonishing might. Colin heaved a sigh of relief. The current situation was similar to what he had guessed. Their speed was as fast as lightning, their figures like ghosts. Their repeated attacks, some of them suddenly appeared outside the energy barrier, some of them even directly attacked the energy barrier. The distance between both parties was extremely close, to the point that they could see each other's sinister faces. Many of the soldiers were affected, their movements became messy, their synchronization dropped to varying degrees, and the energy barrier became unstable. Colin knew that the biggest obstacle in the battle was the terrain. The thin energy would make it extremely difficult for them to fight, but at the same time, it would increase the enemy's strength. Just at that moment he saw the crowd of people outside the energy barrier suddenly split apart, revealing a path. Colin's face was stern as he bellowed at his soldiers. He believed that as long as they did not panic, the enemy would definitely not be able to break through their energy barrier. The energy barrier formed by the army was enough to defend against the attacks from warship weapons. No matter how strong the enemy were, Colin did not believe that they could break through their energy barrier. Colin did not have any intention to advance to the bottom of the city and fight with the Sin domain. He split the army into a few groups, and took turns to attack the stronghold from afar. He even specially removed the warship weapons from a few warships, as the powerful warship weapons gave Dooku and the rest an immense pressure. Indiscriminate bombardment. The Sin domain scouts who were glaring at the side were like tortoises that had shrunk into their shells, with nowhere to attack. Even Colin was shocked by the sudden light aura, but the intense trembling of the energy barrier caused his heart to jump to his throat. But as both parties became familiar with each other, Colin's army started to gain the upper hand. Compared to long-range attacks, Colin's army held a greater advantage. Colin's army was most familiar with long-range attacks, while the Sin domain was at a disadvantage, as there were not many energy laws that could engage in long-range battles. Colin looked at the Sin domain martial artists floating in the sky, and revealed a look of shock. The undulations released by the Sin domain martial artists in the sky were truly terrifying. Although he had long known that the Sin domain martial artists were extremely powerful, but personally witnessing it, it still gave Colin a huge shock. They were like a tide, pouncing towards the honorable martial continent's formation from all directions, all of them in a frenzy. Initially, Colin did not think much of it as he had specially set up defenses against the scouts. But the Xin Domain scouts' attack had exceeded his expectations. They did not have a strict organization and were like a pack of wolves, forming groups of 3 to 5, continuously attacking the formation. The powerful martial artists of the Xin Domain grew up in an extremely cruel environment, and every martial artist with a bit of fame had experienced countless of battles and killings. And the martial artists on the list had crawled out from a pile of corpses. Maybe they did not have any attainments in battle formations, but their understanding of battles and their acute sense of opportunities was definitely not something a military general like Colin could imagine. The Xin Door stronghold was also the first to retaliate. The soldiers behind the energy barrier had never seen such a terrifying enemy before, and their eyes were filled with fear. The dense energy inside the formation greatly affected the Xin Domain martial artist's strength, but he was still extremely ferocious. He was like a ferocious beast, and after continuously killing over 10 soldiers, he was killed by the swarm of sword and spear auras. But very quickly, Colin knew that his understanding of the Xin Domain was still too shallow. He was prepared to increase the strength of his defense and gave up on attacking the stronghold, and first deal with the surrounding enemies that were like a tide. With such a dense group of people, they only needed a few volleys to cause the enemy to suffer heavy casualties. The energy barrier that Colin thought was sufficiently sturdy was in imminent danger, and he knew that he had missed out on something before the battle. But he did not have the time to think about it. He had no choice but to mobilize a portion of his forces and increase the number of people maintaining the energy barrier. Martial artists who had gained enlightenment on the law surface, upon unleashing their full strength, would be extremely powerful and terrifying. Chapter 875. The so-called stronghold was just a pretense. The true killing move was the opponent's army. The other side was very cunning. From the beginning they had sent out a large number of scouts to kill their own scouts. He wanted Colin to get used to the existence of the Xin Domain scouts, and only then could he numb Colin. Everyone's breathing was heavy, their eyes were red, and a strange feeling that they had never felt before rose in their hearts. Someone's entire body was covered in electricity. The electricity was as thick as an arm and wrapped around the golden palace like snakes. Someone's arms seemed to be hugging each other. The space within was slightly concave and a terrifying wind-eye whimpered. Wind blades circled around the palace. Someone's entire body was emitting an extremely cold frost that spread along the golden palace. Why? No one expected Zhou Xian to use Tactic 9 right from the start, not even Du Ku. But in the Xin Domain army, Zhou Xian held absolute authority, and even Du Ku had to listen to her commands. The palace silently crashed into the energy barrier. Countless people were still fighting to be the first. The golden light aura beneath Du Ku's feet quickly expanded outwards, and instantly enveloped the entire Xin Domain army. It was as though the Xin Domain army was standing on a pool of gold liquid. Countless of gold light surged out from the ground, strand after strand, with astonishing speed. They formed illusory outlines in the air. And that fortress. Yes, they were indeed the rulers. They were responsible for the final blow. The other party was even more brilliant than he thought. All the light in the sky seemed to be swallowed up, becoming its best curtain. The roars and shouts that resounded throughout the battlefield suddenly disappeared. Time seemed to stop at this moment. The air became solid and the energy stopped flowing. An army. And the one who launched the fatal attack was the Xin Domain army. For these geniuses who grew up in the region, it was normal for them to risk their lives. In the cruel Xin Domain, to survive one had to risk their lives. Compared to this, what was the point of risking one's life in training? Colin was certain that Sanctum would not make a mistake on such an important issue. Out of all the information he had come across, the one that was mentioned the most was the Xin Domain's fighting style. The Xin Domain only knew how to fight one-on-one. They did not have any armies, and in the information they had analyzed the reason for that. The crisp sound of glass shattering rang in everyone's mind. Du Ku suppressed the excitement in his heart. He did not expect the battle to be so intense. He ran to the Xin Domain and mobilized everyone, hoping to reinforce the desolate continent. It was out of his expectations that so many people would come, and it was even more out of his expectations that everyone would risk their lives. No one knew better than him that in the past 300 years, the honorable martial continent had left an undefeatable shadow in the hearts of the Xin Domain people. In the past 300 years, the piles of corpses in front of the Xin Door had long scattered the fighting spirit of the Xin Domain people. They all understood. The golden palace seemed to have been painted with gorgeous colors, and it was gorgeous and flowing with colors. The Xin Domain army was currently in a state of battle. Colin's mind was extremely clear at the moment. He knew that he was going to lose this time. All of his battle plans were made to counter Xin's original fighting style. Only now did he realize how wrong he was. Almost in an instant, Colin understood many things. A breathtaking light entered Colin's field of vision. Deathly silence, a deathly silence. This is the will of the Xin Domain, this is the 300-year blood feud, this is the only hope for the Xin Domain to escape from that cage. This is the first battle for them to regain everything that once belonged to them. The Xin Domain has an army. In truth, the soldiers of the Xin Domain army did not think highly of the martial artist. But the scene in front of him shocked him. Everyone in the Xin Domain army was shocked. All of the people that they viewed as ants in the Xin Domain were fighting with their lives on the line, fighting with everything they had. Dooku was currently overwhelmed with emotions, and upon hearing Du Xianyu's shout for tactic number 9, he was slightly surprised, but it was exactly what he wanted. The only absolute martial artist in the Xin Domain who had gained enlightenment on a law domain. Under the suppression of Tang Tian's God Armor army, he used his deepest comprehension of laws and Du Xianyu's unparalleled intelligence, as well as the strongest elites of the Xin Domain to create the strongest killing technique. They never thought that it would be their strongest attack right from the start. Tactic number 9. Ever since she saw Tang Tian's God Armor army's shocking tactic number 9 at the Xin door, Du Xianyu was deeply shocked, and decided to create the strongest attack of the Xin Domain army. It was obvious that Temple had made a mistake. The Xin Domain must have undergone some shocking change, and Temple is completely unaware of it. It was extremely heavy, as though they were carrying something on their backs. Their weapons were tattered, their strength was mediocre, their talent was ordinary, and in the eyes of the Heavens Chosen, they were considered cannon fodder. A gold palace gradually formed, and at the same time, countless of light auras lingered around the palace. The entire Xin Domain army firmly believed that they were the rulers of the battle. An indescribable silence and pressure enveloped the entire battlefield. In time, the gold palace was filled with strange phenomena. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, frost storms blew, and space was destroyed. His heart continued to sink. He knew that he was wrong, Temple was wrong, everyone was wrong. The hatred between the Xin Domain and the honorable martial continent was something that they did not need to mobilize. The entire Xin Domain did not need to mobilize. Looking at the people with bloodshot eyes who looked as though they had gone crazy, every single Xin Domain army soldier felt as though there was a fire burning in their hearts. Furthermore, the enemy is the honorable martial continent. Truly powerful. They all understood the logic that Dooku had told them, as all of them were extremely intelligent. The lone stronghold was the best target. As long as they took down the stronghold, they could end the war. It was the fattest bait in the entire trap, to the point that Colin was unable to reject it. Time. What he lacked the most was time, and what Temple lacked the most was time as well. She and Dooku had spent a great deal of effort to finally form this move, and Du Xianyu had also named it tactic number 9. Colin almost thought that he was seeing things. Army. The Xin Domain actually has an army. Although he was unfamiliar with the enemy's formation and had never seen it before, the formation looked to be in a mess. But Colin was 100% sure that it was an army, a true army. One wrong step and every step will be wrong. As long as they destroyed the enemy's large formation's energy barrier, the scales of victory would tilt to their side. Be it in close combat or in a chaotic battle, the honorable martial continent was definitely not their match. All of them held in their breaths. But they had never felt it as deeply as they did now. Dooku was extremely clear of this. He had never placed his hopes on others, and his actions stemmed from his unwillingness to accept it. It was a feeling that they had never felt before. In the Xin Domain, killing, fighting, survival, that was what everyone was most familiar with, and fighting for survival, that was the feeling they were most familiar with. All of the Xin Domain martial artists were temporarily mobilized by Dooku from the Xin Domain. How many people did Dooku mobilize? No one knew. Even Dooku himself did not know. Everyone only saw family after family, tens of thousands of martial artists, walking out of the Xin door and entering the desolate continent. In the chaotic battlefield, everyone stopped what they were doing. They stared blankly at the majestic and solemn palace in the sky. The intense battlefield suddenly quietened down. An indescribable pressure enveloped the entire place. Even the active energy in the formation had become sluggish, to the point that it was almost frozen. In the next moment, the sky-shattering cheers and shouts of killing suddenly sounded out, like the raging waves of the ocean engulfing him. But when they saw the ordinary martial artists, the cannon fodder that they would never even look at in the past were so crazy and reckless, every single one of them were like that. They completely disregarded the consequences of their life-risking attacks, and in the Sin domain such attacks were rarely seen. But in the surging tide of people, every single one of them were like that. Their faces were filled with fanaticism. They roared and roared, using their bodies to strike the energy barrier. As long as a crack appeared on the energy barrier, countless figures would rush in, even if they knew that they would die inside the energy barrier. Shock and unprecedented shock. Many of them had long reached the realm of large success in their law surface, and were extremely powerful. Under Colin's incredulous gaze, the incomparably thick energy shield was truly like glass, completely shattering. Thus, Colin brought along his warship weapons and formulated a plan to attack the city. Unknowingly, they had already been led astray by the enemy. Seeing how the enemy's energy barrier was surging like a tide, Zhou Xian acutely sensed that their chance had arrived. They were arrogant and had no one in their eyes, but since the start, they had been firmly suppressed by Tang Tian's God Armor Army. The mere 200 men of the God Armor Army had a fighting strength that completely surpassed them. How could the proud sons of heaven swallow this down? Every single one of them immediately activated their own law power to the maximum. The series of arrangements were all for the sake of the most fatal attack. In her heart, tactic number 9 was the strongest attack. The chance for victory was here. Ping. Even the final trump card had been meticulously thought out by the enemy. Hiding amongst the scattered scouts, they used the frantic attacks of the scouts to create an opportunity. Everyone was fighting with their lives on the line. Without hesitation, she shouted with all her might, "Tactic number 9. They trained frantically, incomparably frantic. It was not only him. Zhou Xian was also extremely excited. She was not only excited because of everyone's bravery, she was even more excited because she saw the hope of victory. All of this was arranged by her, and in her plans, the ordinary martial artists were only there to hide the tracks of the Sin domain army. But she never thought that the ordinary martial artists would be able to display an effect that far exceeded her expectations. But regardless of how powerful the light auras were, the Gold Palace remained unmoved, because it was Zhou Xian's law domain. All of these characteristics were what the enemy wanted them to see. As expected, Colin quickly saw through the scouts. They were individually strong but lacked organization and were not proficient in battle formations. With their numbers, as long as Colin maintained the formation, the scouts would not be able to shake the formation and were nothing to fear. The proud sons of heaven of the Sin domain army were completely shocked. The Sin domain army that Zhou Xian had formed was comprised of the strongest and most talented people in the entire Sin domain. Even Tang Tian's God Armor Army could not be compared to Zhou Xian's Sin domain army in terms of individual qualities. It could be said that Zhou Xian's army was the most elite in the entire Sin domain. Chapter 876. Kai Si said faintly, "Furthermore, we are sinners and will fight even harder." The two of them stood up and looked at each other, both of them seeing the seriousness and caution in each other's eyes. To the current them, they could not afford to lose anymore. "Stop dreaming, go ahead and be jealous. The ruined honorable marshal's roar is so tempting." The gigantic hull was filled with bulging things. They were very light, and when the wind blew they would sway. Furthermore, they had all sorts of colors looking like inflatable garbage bags. It was extremely comical. The windows were obviously newly added. They were actually lazy to the point that they did not even paint them. Gu Tei, who had good eyesight, could even see the burrs and curls. And also, what are those things that look like building blocks? But now, the scouts said that they had discovered an ultimate army warship flying towards them. "It's coming from the warship cemetery." Seeing Gu Tei's confused face, he explained, "The legendary warship Honorable Marshal's Roar is buried in the warship cemetery." The two warships were laughing non-stop. The ruined Honorable Marshal's Roar. They felt that Gu Tei's description was too apartment. The captains of the other warships were jealous of the two warships' good luck. It was their first achievement in the war. The cloud-swallowing ship and the North Light ship had truly picked up a huge bargain. Kai Si explained, "According to what I know, the current frontline forces are stretched thin. and the shortage of manpower is extremely serious. Furthermore, the situation at the front lines is not good. Master Go Qing Wendao, Master Qiu Su Hua and Master Mo Xen are all in trouble. Oliver's entire army was extremely relaxed. The atmosphere in the army had been terrible recently, and the ruined Honorable Marshal's roar had given everyone a lot of joy. Even Kai Si and Gu Tei had a smile on their faces. This was a happy interlude. Relax. Gu Tei patted his chest loudly. He was extremely heroic. Whoever dares to find trouble, I will definitely beat them until they piss their pants. Oliver being imprisoned was a calamity for the army. The two of them still held on to a trace of hope, since Master Oliver was hailed as someone with great military contributions, and had the chance to make a comeback. But this time Temple's military strength was extremely tight, and Temple still did not use Master Oliver. The two of them completely understood that Master Oliver had no hope. Suddenly the alarm went off. Maybe they're running out of food. Gu Tei rubbed his chin. They can only take the risk and fight for their lives. That's right, why are they flying towards us? Kai Si didn't say anything. His usually spirited eyes were filled with confusion. Definitely a bunch of poor pirates. Gut added, very poor. Keith laughed out loud. He was teasing him on purpose. He knew Gu Tei too well. This guy was a battle maniac. If he didn't fight a few times a day, he would feel uncomfortable all over. He could retire and live a leisurely life. After all, he had earned quite a lot of money from Lord Oliver over the past few years. He knew that Gu Tei would never retire. A leisurely life would only stifle this guy. Is this Honorable Marshal's roar? Gu Tei stuttered. He was shocked by the crudeness of the other party's construction. With a casual glance, Gu Tei found several places that were wrong, full of mistakes. He had never seen such a shoddily built ship. It refreshed his understanding of the lower limits of craftsmanship. Even if the other party had modified the Honorable Marshal's roar, an antique that had been scrapped for hundreds of years, Gu Tei still had the feeling that the Honorable Marshal's roar was being ruined. Ah, that's right. In the future, please call me the man who sank the ultimate army warship. You guys can only watch from the side, haha, that feels great. The two of them could not help but sink into silence. That's possible, the Honorable Marshal's roar's main structure is extremely sturdy. We are doing this for your own good. Whatever name we change has nothing to do with us. Gu Tei forced a smile. We will complete this mission properly. Even if we don't have any merits, we will still have our hard work. As long as we are not sent to a place where even birds don't shit, I will be satisfied. Gu Tei nodded his head in agreement. This is truly unbearable. Seems like we have to help them. Cloud-swallowing ship, Northlight ship, go and destroy this Honorable Marshal's roar that has been ruined, and help them end their suffering. Ultimate Army warships were the overlords of warships. They were the strongest warships, and any Ultimate Army warship was a gold-grade warship. Ultimate Army warships could not be bought in the market, and in the entire Sacred Saint Galaxy, the number of shipyards that had the ability to manufacture Ultimate Army warships could be counted with one's fingers. They were extremely expensive to build and required countless of precious materials. Even the rich and imposing Honorable Marshal continent, with their entire continent's strength, were only able to build 5 of them. Yes, they have all been sent out, there are no abnormalities. Kai Si said without turning his head. Compared to the tall and sturdy Gu Tei, he was much skinnier. But no one would look down on him because of that. In Oliver's army, his position was not inferior to Gu Tei. Have the scouts been sent out? Honorable Marshal's roar. Gu Tei then understood and relaxed. You are talking about that antique warship. Did they modify the Honorable Marshal's roar? What a joke, who would think of such a stupid idea? It is just a scrapped antique. Do you think it can be used after some modifications? Kai Si's perplexed eyes became clearer and he scoffed. You can go and train the new soldiers. The war will not end so quickly and everyone needs to replenish their manpower. For a commander of your level, if you are willing to go and train the new soldiers, no one will go against you. Hey, this ship is so big, can the two of you with your small bodies handle it? We are extremely happy to help you. It is enough for us to fight. Gu Tei said without hesitation. His eyes lit up and regained his fighting spirit. Kai Si seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked, which direction are they coming from? This is our last chance, Yong Kai said. Gu Tei sighed. He looked at the war flag and sighed. I reckon that the flag will have to be changed. I wonder what it will be called. Without hesitation, Kai Si immediately ordered the entire army to be on guard. Let's go take a look. Gu Tei said. Warship Cemetery. Kai Si was enlightened. I understand the warship cemetery truly has an ultimate army warship. He had heard of some news but did not expect it to be so serious. In the eyes of the honorable martial continent's people, the 5 great generals were invincible existences. Among the honorable martial continent's generals, it was the same. Gu Tei and the rest understood that it was not easy to rise to the rank of a great general. If it was said that a lieutenant general could still gain experience, it was definitely impossible to become a great general. What kind of warship is that? The current Whitefields continent was a desolate scene. There were no signs of human habitation. Only the star door that led to the desolate continent was bustling with activity. Alright, it is a miracle that the ship is able to fly. 2 middle-sized warships separated from the group and flew towards the ruined Honorable Marshal's roar. Gu Tei's expression was obvious. If not for the few scouts reporting at the same time, he would have thought that the man was speaking nonsense. If they did not know that it was the Honorable Marshal's roar, no one would be able to link the broken and tattered garbage ship with the legendary Honorable Marshal's roar. Out of caution, Kai Si and Gu Tei decided to go take a look. Gut sat down beside Keys and asked casually. He had a head of short brown hair, a robust body and an aggressive nature. When Oliver was still around, he was Oliver's right-hand man. We need to complete our mission first. Kai Si reminded. We need to display our fighting strength to the higher-ups. But this speed is as slow as a tortoise. With a group of warships docked here, it was a spectacular sight. The star door was narrow, making it difficult for large and middle-sized warships to pass through. The small-sized warships had limited defense and could be easily broken through. Gu Tei took in a cold breath. How can this be? Even the 3 great generals are unable to defeat the enemy. Oliver's army's war flag was raised high. The encampment was extremely strict. After laughing, Kai Si then said, Relax, it's not like we don't have a chance. Kai Si was somewhat sympathetic. So pitiful. That's right. Free help. How about it? If you guys can't kill them, how embarrassing would that be? Gu Tei's eyes lit up. He trusted Kai Si and immediately leaned forward. Quickly tell me, what chance do we have? The ruined Honorable Marshal's roar was truly a different scene. Gu Tei was brave, Kai Si was good at scheming. The 2 of them had been partners for many years, and had a tacit understanding with each other as though they were brothers. Kai Si also felt that it was inconceivable. The Honorable Marshal's roar had been scrapped in the warship cemetery for a few hundred years, and there were actually people who had ideas on such a useless old antique. I do not know the exact details. Kai Si continued. If it is true, then to us it might be an opportunity. If the front lines are not in a pinch, then we will definitely be broken up and be replenished by other armies. But if the front lines are in a pinch for an army like ours, as long as we are sent to the front lines, we will be able to display our usefulness. Temple will definitely not do such a thing at such a critical juncture. The other warship captains immediately started to ridicule them. Kai Si, who was dumbstruck, blurted out, Pirates. When Gu Tei heard the report from the scouts, he had a strange expression. What? Ultimate army warship? Are you sure you are not mistaken? Kai Si agreed with Gu Tei's words. He stared at the garbage ship and asked, Then why are they flying towards us? That's right. Gu Tei firmly believed in his deduction. To be so desperate to find a ship that had been scrapped for a few hundred years to modify, how poor are they? Pirates were always willing to spend money on things that could save their lives. How poor are they? All those red and green garbage bags. To not even let go of the garbage bags. How poor are they? The welfare and treatment of the local armies had a huge difference. The more remote and desolate the place, the worse the welfare and treatment. Gu Tei's eyes became brighter and brighter. Hey, now that you mention it, it might be possible. It was the most logical guess that he could think of. The 2 warships did not show any signs of weakness. Train the recruits. Gu Tei's face turned green. Definitely not. If I have to look at those recruits every day, I will definitely go crazy. When the 2 of them saw the ultimate army warship from the scouts, their expressions became completely sluggish. The 2 of them had followed Master Oliver for many years, and could be considered as Oliver's true trusted aides, and it was difficult for others to accept them. They were already considered lucky that they were not implicated by Master Oliver. Their most probable way out was to be transferred to a local army, and then quietly grow old. This army would also be broken up and divided by other armies, and such elite soldiers were still welcomed by other armies. Chapter 877. The dazzling rain of light covered every corner of their field of vision. After a moment of brilliance, everyone's eyes became a vast expanse of whiteness. They were previously intimidated by the ultimate army warship's terrifying offensive power, and after hearing the two generals' words, their thirst for victory was ignited. Yes, although the enemy was strong, they had the advantage of numbers. Bang! He knew that he was not the only one thinking. The entire Null Division had the same thoughts. At the moment, the Null Division members inside the warship were filled with nervousness, excitement, worry, all sorts of emotions, but the harsh training allowed them to maintain their composure. Seeing the enemy warship getting closer and closer, inside the Honorable Marshal's roar, all sounds disappeared, and it became extremely quiet. The warship fell into a brief and strange silence. To any warship, the importance of the energy shield was greater than the warship's weapons. Without an energy shield, the survivability of a battleship on the battlefield was almost zero. The sound of the explosion was deafening. It was so concentrated that it was like a storm of heavy punches. The hull of the ship was like a sandbag, shaking like a sieve. The balls of flames were like demonic flowers of death in full bloom. He took a few steps forward in a daze to the edge of the deck and looked through the opening at the whole field of battle. Niechio's orders drew the curtains to the battle. Once he got out of his pessimistic state, Kai Si's mind immediately began to spin. The enemy's attack power is very strong. Let's spread out and disperse the enemy's firepower. The enemy's battleship doesn't have an energy shield, so its defense should not be high. This is our chance. No matter what, they could not lose to the monster battalion. An intense pain came from his back and he could barely straighten his back. Something had smashed into his forehead and something seemed to be dripping down. In the face of such terrifying firepower, the ridicule and wanton teasing just now were the sarcasm of the Grim Reaper. Niechio, who was born in the Leo constellation, had sought refuge with Tang Tian because he did not have the opportunity. Tang Tian did not discriminate against him and entrusted him with a heavy responsibility. He knew how difficult it was. It was not an empty saying that a gentleman would die for his bosom friend. The Honorable Marshal's roar in front of them had changed beyond recognition. It was a complete mess. The hull was severely damaged and the energy barrier could not be used. That was also the reason why the Honorable Marshal's roar had remained dormant in the warship graveyard for hundreds of years. But no one had any ideas about it. It should be bleeding. Beside him, Gu Tei held his head in his hands, unable to believe his eyes. However, the two huge fireballs on the battlefield reminded him of what had just happened. The explosion was not as bright as the enemy's volley, and the captain of the Cloud Devourer's vision gradually recovered. A cold light flashed in Kai Si's eyes. The battle had just begun. Attack. This extremely ugly garbage ship was actually a true ultimate army warship. The bulk of the Null Division was made up of the Lupus race that were loyal and devoted to Tang Tian, and a Maori Han Bingning, and the rest were even Tang Tian's companions in the past. Everyone knew very well how powerful their enemy was. This was a warship without an energy shield. The newly added structure of the ship was full of mistakes, and it was impossible to construct a complete energy shield. These 6 words were like thunder exploding in his mind, and his body involuntarily trembled. Yes, an ultimate army warship. It was definitely an ultimate army warship. He had been a captain for 16 years and would definitely not be wrong. Such a terrifying offensive power could only be achieved by an ultimate army warship. The bow of the Cloud Devourer ship had completely disappeared. The gale surged in, causing the flames behind him to burn even more intensely. The crackling sounds of the flames could be heard. Inside the flames, screams could be heard as soldiers covered in flames continuously jumped down from the warship. The charred and broken deck beneath his feet was covered in blood. The sturdy hull had scars that looked like paper being torn apart. It was a ghastly sight. The space in front of him was empty. The broken hull and him were exposed to the air. It must be known that even their startling-looking warship was pieced together from all over the place, and was a piece of junk that was dug out from the trash heap. Although it had undergone modifications, but as for its might, even Sai Lei did not know. Can I escape? The captain of the Cloud Devourer ship laughed bitterly. his face that was covered in smoke was filled with despair. Gu Tei inhaled cold air, his entire body turned cold, he suppressed the intense fear in his heart and forced himself to remain calm. Seems like we have met with a huge problem. Alright, the Cloud Devourer ship is no different. In that moment, the attack released by the garbage ship was definitely of an ultimate army warship grade. But at that moment he could not be bothered to check on his own injuries. There was only endless fear in his heart, causing his mind to buzz. Many people nodded their heads. Energy barriers were not like warship weapons, they only needed to be added on. To a warship, defense was much more technical than offense. The energy barrier of the warship was not activated by the crew members, but carved on the hull itself. He did not know of Tang Tian's entire plan, but he could see that the master's plan was not a small matter. He did not wish for the master's plan to fail because of the null division, that was something he could not accept. Under Zhong Li Bai's lead, the monster army had fought a series of beautiful battles, causing the null division to hold their breaths. When the null division was flaunting their might in the past, the monster army was still a group of bandits. Ultimate army warship. Behind them, Kai Si and Gu Ti's faces were pale white. The two of them were stunned by the scene in front of them. Niechio was clear that every single army, every victory or defeat, could possibly have a huge impact on the entire war. They were in the enemy's territory, and if they were careless they would be completely wiped out. And if they were able to win the battle, the enemy's military strength would be further reduced, and the originally insufficient military strength would become even more critical. The captain of the cloud-swallowing ship froze. Before he could even shout out the word attack, his voice was engulfed by the boundless light aura, as though the cloud-swallowing ship had crashed into a mountain. The entire body of the ship trembled. The immense force caused him to feel as though he was struck by a wild beast. He instantly lost his balance and was flung out. Gu Ti's voice was extremely loud and everyone in the warship could hear it. It was a formless pressure. Suddenly, Gu Ti patted his shoulder, causing him to raise his head in a daze. The ridicule towards the garbage ship made Kai Si feel that he was extremely stupid. He had never thought that there would be a day where he would be so stupid. The intense fear made the feeling even clearer. Other than victory, there is no other way out. This is a true ultimate army warship. Kai Si's body trembled, he immediately reacted and was filled with self-blame. What's wrong with me? Why did I lose my fighting spirit? He looked at Gu Ti with gratitude and spoke loudly, that's right. No matter how powerful they are, they only have one warship. We have so many warships, as long as everyone works together we will definitely win. A dazzling rain of light blossomed in front of the soldiers of Oliver's army without any warning. When he saw the North Light ship, a thick pillar of light shot into the hull of the North Light ship, destroying everything in its path. 2 seconds later, a dazzling light blossomed inside the warship. Light blue flames spewed out from the windows on both sides of the warship as well as the gaps. Ultimate army warship. Kai Si muttered, his voice trembling. In just one strike, the cloud-swallowing ship was split into two and completely lost its fighting spirit. The calm before the storm. It was not only him, everyone's faces were filled with killing intent. Gu Ti felt his blood boiling, the fighting intent in his body roaring. He suddenly raised his arms and shouted, "Kill them!" Many of the soldiers' dim eyes lit up. The suffocating beauty was filled with a fatal killing intent. Inside the honorable marshal's roar. He knew that his judgment was accurate, but it did not change his situation at all. The cloud-swallowing ship was a medium-sized warship in front of an ultimate army warship, and had no way to resist. Both parties were on completely different levels, regardless of whether it was in terms of offense or defense. He felt that he was like a lamb in front of a tiger. He did not know how to retaliate or how to escape. It was as though he could see traces of blood on the sharp teeth. The endless fear almost swallowed him, causing his body to tremble even more. Gu Ti shouted, "Don't be disheartened. No matter how powerful an ultimate army warship is, they only have one. We still have a chance." Is that the ultimate army warship? With that last sentence, Kai Si's fist smashed onto the table, his face sinister. Everyone held their breaths, their eyes wide open as though they were facing a great enemy. All of them were experienced in battles, but at that moment they were extremely nervous. In the past battles, most of them used methods that they were familiar with. Even in the Sin domain, there were many tactics that they were not familiar with, but were still within their comprehension. But a warship battle was completely different from their past battles. It was a completely new way of fighting. After we scatter, we will rush towards them from all directions. As long as one warship is able to enter our firing range, they will be finished. The bodies of the warships were filled with trash bags that fluttered in the wind, although they did not know what was inside, but no one felt that the fluttering things had any defensive capabilities. Whoosh, the Null Division members who were long prepared all straightened their backs, all of their eyes revealing light, as though they were ferocious tigers that were about to be released. Killing intent pervaded out from the warship. When he saw the hellish scene in front of him, he was stunned. It was the motivation to compete. In the stifling silence, Niechio's eyes flashed with a bright light aura. He said, "Prepare to attack." Upon modification, the original energy barrier would be destroyed, and the Honorable Marshal's Roar's main body was one body that could not be modified, thus there was no point in modifying it. Everyone roared out, "Kill them!" The captain of the cloud-swallowing ship, who had just awoken from a dream, shouted out, "Enemy!" He knew how terrifying the blue flames were, and only when the star rocks inside the warship were ignited would they be able to form the blue flames. Its temperature was extremely high and no one could stop it. Upon the appearance of the blue flames, it meant that the warship was completely finished, and what was more terrifying was that no one would be able to escape. All of the battle positions lit up with energy light auras at the same time, and the Honorable Marshal's roar that resembled a whale in the sea suddenly became covered with densely packed light spots. The ancient warship that had slumbered for hundreds of years seemed to have awoken from its slumber, and once again revealed its sinister claws to the world. Everyone had trained extremely bitterly and meticulously, but it was unable to remove the faint worry in everyone's hearts. Chapter 878. What kind of attack was that? Niechio's attention had never slackened. He was born blind, but his senses were exceptionally sharp. Even the smallest changes were within his grasp. The dark world was never dull to him. It was rich and full of mysteries. The two of them were the strongest individuals in the Null Division, and were strong to the point that they could rely on their own strength to control warship weapons. In order to completely activate the combat power of the two of them, Sai Lei spent a lot of effort. The core component of the Heavenly Dragon Ice Frost Sword was a Draco Constellation Gold Treasure, Heavenly Dragon Sword. And the core component of the Ursa Major Heavenly Demonic Execution was the Gold Treasure of Ursa Major Constellation, the Bear Paw Cleaving Blade. The sound of explosions outside was incessant, and it was so dense that it made everyone's heart tremble. Even if they treated the ultimate army warships as canned food, they would not be able to fit so many soldiers. The captain's angry roar could be heard throughout the ship. The soldiers' faces were pale and they were trembling. Before entering their firing range, they were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They had no power to fight back. They prayed desperately in their hearts, praying that they could make it through this zone of death. A red saber light suddenly flew out. "We will now begin to assign the targets." Niechio spoke quickly. Boom. The faces of the soldiers on the battleship were filled with shock. Before they could even scream, the battleship under their feet shook violently as if it had hit a mountain. A huge force came and their bodies flew out uncontrollably. They fell to the ground and rolled into a ball. "Understood," Han Bingning answered without hesitation. Every detail of the battlefield was reflected in Niechio's mind. When the first warship entered his firing range, he did not react at all. Only when the fourth enemy warship entered the Honorable Marshal's Roar's firing range did he suddenly raise his head. The ice-cold order stirred the killing intent that pervaded the entire warship, like a lightning that swept across the entire warship. Because the soldiers couldn't take it. When the enemy's warships dispersed like a flock of birds, he immediately understood their commander's intentions. The endless bloody light made them feel like they were in a sea of blood. Everyone put away their smiles, their expressions solemn and focused as they secretly remembered their mission. Han Bingning's face was as cold as ice. She controlled a warship weapon by herself. 36 blue light swords swam around her like a school of blue fish. This was the warship weapon that Sai Lei had specially forged for her, the Sky Dragon Frost Sword. The opponent's attack was shockingly powerful, and it was obvious that it required a lot of soldiers to control it. This grade of warship weapon would usually only be used as the main weapon of the warship. But all of Honorable Marshal's Roar's attacks were actually so powerful. There was almost no pause, wave after wave, never tiring. What made Kai feel even more despair was the frequency of the enemy's warship's attacks. Ultimate Army Warship Grade Attack Power? No. I really hope this is a dream. Damn it. The captain cursed, his expression extremely ugly. He had only taken one attack and cracks had already appeared on the energy shield. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. Could it be that their warship weapons would not cause any burden to the soldiers? Amauri, on the other hand, had an eager look on his face. He leaned forward with his arms hanging in front of him and his palms clenched, as if there was a large knife in his hands. Behind him, a red seal shaped like a bear's paw flickered. It was also a warship weapon that Sai Lei had personally forged, the Ursa Major Demonic Slash. He was waiting for orders. The others could not help but sigh. After the period of training, they were extremely familiar with the Honorable Marshal's Roar's attack power. If the defensive system that Sai Lei and Screw had created could be said to be worrying, then the offensive system that they had created was definitely extremely powerful. The Shang continent had a mature and advanced warship weapon manufacturing technology, adding 3 Spirit Cities' unparalleled metal smelting technology. With star treasures as the core components, the warship weapons created were unprecedentedly powerful. Over 10 clumps of fiery lights exploded at the same time, producing a low rumbling sound, as though a heavy hammer was hammering down on everyone's heart. The captain's entire body trembled. He who was defenseless felt his mind go blank, his expression blank. He stared blankly at the 10 clumps of fiery lights blossoming in his own fleet. The bright red bewitching flames were like flowers of death. A small-scale warship was instantly disintegrated, and before the countless fragments could even fly out, they were engulfed by the flames. Rain of light. This word was often used to describe the fierceness of the attack, but only the people who witnessed the scene knew what it was. Although Kai Si and Gu Tei had never served on an Ultimate Army warship before, but they had a rough understanding of the offensive power of an Ultimate Army warship, as they had personally witnessed the attacks of an Ultimate Army warship. But it was definitely incomparable to the scene in front of them. The captain wiped the blood off his face and roared, "Energy barrier!" The situation of the energy barrier. Finally able to fight to his heart's content, Amauri felt that his entire body was brimming with energy. If it was in the past, he would have shouted out excitedly and pounced forward to kill. But after a long period of training in the army, he was no longer the rash and impulsive Amauri of the past, and was able to control his temper well. A neutral warship 10 kilometers away only saw a blur in front of them, as a blood-red light aura exploded out without any warning. Before the red blade aura could even fly out of the warship, the light aura beneath Amauri's feet erupted as though swallowing him whole. Heavy demonic execution. A few of the stronger soldiers did not care about the pain on their bodies and crawled up with all their might. Crazy. Go go go. The sinister Gu Tei was like a wild beast that was forced into a corner. He roared out, "Killing technique, that is their killing technique. They definitely have a weakness. All the warships in the world have a weakness. Rush over, we can win." The laughter that had just erupted suddenly disappeared. The inside of the warship became so quiet that even the sound of a needle dropping could be heard. Niechio's voice was not loud, but it was clearly transmitted to every corner. Kai Si and Gu Tei's faces also changed. If the destruction of the cloud-swallowing ship and North Light ship proved that the Honorable Marshal's Roar truly possessed the offensive strength of an Ultimate Army warship, but after personally experiencing it, they realized how wrong they were. The entire battlefield was completely enveloped in the rain of light, and he was unable to see his own warships that were slightly further away. All he could see was the light that was like raindrops. No, it was a flood of light, an ocean of light. After going through the baptism of Sin Domain's tempering, the Null Division was already an army with rich battle experience. Although they were somewhat nervous due to the new style of fighting, but after 2 volleys of fire destroyed the enemy's cloud-swallowing ship and North Light ship, they quickly regained their composure. That was the difference between a veteran and a rookie. The veteran's understanding of battle and mental state allowed them to have a strong ability to adjust themselves on the battlefield. Their offensive strength is truly too terrifying. An Ultimate Army warship. Is that an Ultimate Army warship? The 2 warship weapons were no longer the traditional warship weapons. Not only did Sai Lei use gold star treasures as the core components, He had also referenced many refinement techniques of spirit treasures. Its might far exceeded everyone's expectations. The only weakness was that it was unable to weaken the attack, and thus in their usual training Han Bingning and Amauri did not dare to use their full strength. The Null Division members who had been waiting for a long time did not hesitate at all and moved out. How many soldiers do they need? It is definitely an astronomical number. The first to move was Amauri. The red bear paw light seal behind him suddenly lit up, and countless blood lights converged onto his body. The red blood lights were like small red snakes that swam along his arms and into his palms. Amauri's clenched palms clapped together, his eyes opened wide in anger. The muscles on his entire body tensed up like dragons and snakes, and he suddenly pulled out his blade. Xianxia floated in the air cross-legged, his empty eyes seemed to be gazing at the distant battlefield. A formless and biting cold killing intent pervaded the honorable marshal's roar, causing the temperature to drop. Ultimate army worship. His eyes looked at the honorable marshal's roar in front of him. All of the warships were advancing frantically, like moths flying into a flame. They were going against the sea of light. It was not difficult to increase the number of warship weapons on the battlefield, but no one would do that. Rush. Full speed ahead. Do not stop. Definitely not. What made him even more incredulous was that such a terrifying attack was actually produced by a warship. That was why he felt that it was no longer an attack from an ultimate army warship, because no ultimate army warship could possess such a terrifying offensive strength. Kai Si felt as though he was in a bizarre dream. He had never seen a warship before, a warship weapon that he had never seen before, an attack frequency that he had never seen before, and a sea of light that he had never seen before. Kill. The captain did not know if they could rush over, but any hesitation would only cause them to die faster. But the battle had completely toppled Kai Si's common sense. Countless light auras shot out from the honorable marshal's roar. It was like a porcupine covered with light spikes. The captain had never seen such a terrifying scene before, and his face became as white as paper. Take note, the enemy wants to fight us at close quarters. Xianxia reminded. After the enemy has split up, they will attack us from all directions. That goes against common sense. The stronger the warship weapon, the greater the burden it placed on the soldiers. It was not that there were no stronger warship weapons, but the burden it placed on the soldiers would also reach a terrifying degree, to the point that the soldiers would not be able to recover from it. The red blade light suddenly expanded by 10 times, and inside the blood aura, the heavenly demon afterimage could be seen. The heavenly demon afterimage took a step forward, and before it landed, it disappeared. The soldier's face was filled with panic, his voice trembling. The energy barrier. The energy barrier has cracks. The brave captain looked out of the window in a daze. He saw an unforgettable scene. It is my world. Even the native craftsmen of the sacred Saint Galaxy were shocked speechless by the powerful warship weapons. Amauri scoffed. They are looking down on our attack power. Hold on. The captain knew that the situation was dire and roared out. A piece of shard had slashed his forehead, causing his entire face to be covered in blood, making him look extremely terrifying. Chapter 879. Even if Gute and Kai Si racked their brains, they would never have thought that there would actually be such a strange thing like the zero-energy body in the world. The heavy demonic execution that they had obtained in the Sin domain and the laws tempering their bodies had allowed their bodies to reach an extremely terrifying state. In terms of controlling warship weapons, the Null Division was far inferior to Kusi Gute and the rest, but so what? In the distance, a large army was marching. Even though they were so far away, they could still feel the terrifying scale of this army. The densely packed troops stretched as far as the eye could see. Everyone had a look of disbelief on their faces as they stared blankly at the wreckage scattered all over the ground. Apart from them, there was no one alive on the battlefield. The wreckage of the battleships could be seen everywhere. They were burnt black and were all debris. Not a single battleship wreckage could remain intact. Their inhumanly strong bodies easily made up for this weakness. It was fine if they couldn't hit their target once, they just had to hit it a few more times. In the time it took Cascut and the others to launch one attack, they could launch several attacks. This was the victory? He had to admit that this woman was very powerful. This time he had mobilized all of the most elite forces in the Wei Yiguan continent. Mu Jixia had a bitter taste in his mouth. The operation to infiltrate the savage continent was a complete failure. Not only did he fail to kill the Perseus Empress, but he even caused the Wei Yiguan continent to fall into danger. The energy shield of the medium-sized battleship Kai Si and Gu Tei were on finally couldn't hold on any longer. It shattered like a glass cover. This was too illogical. Gu Tei and Kai Si's courage did not bother the Null Division, they only had one thought in their minds. Boom. He had interacted with the various tribes in the savage continent for decades, but had never seen such a large group. This was not a team that could be pulled together by just one or a few tribes. This was an army that could only be gathered by dozens of tribes. But the Wei Yiguan continent was an important city of the Honorable Martial Continent, and Wuxia had spent over 10 years to build it, and was definitely an impregnable fortress. The air here was thin and extremely cold, but Wuxia was indifferent. He was like an ice sculpture staring into the distance, motionless. The battleship was like a blooming red flower, death and beauty were so close. Unfortunately, that woman was not in this army. Otherwise, he would have taken her head even if he had to risk his life. Pa. The Southern Cross Army, one of the tyrants of the three great armies of Heaven's Road. This was not the only tactical innovation brought about by the inhuman body. If Gyut Kais were to enter the Honorable Marshal's roar, he would definitely be shocked to realize that the powerful warship weapons did not require more than 20 men. Oliver's army, all the warships were destroyed by them. On other warships this was impossible. A standard 20-man battleship weapon. In the Sacred Region, it was considered a relatively weak battleship weapon. Those powerful warship weapons often required hundreds of people. Not only was it difficult to operate, the attack frequency was low, and it greatly affected the number of warship weapons installed. At the end of the journey, the warship could no longer bear the burden and completely collapsed. An unprecedentedly dazzling firelight instantly engulfed the warship. The soldiers in the warship didn't even have time to scream before they turned into ashes. They had never felt so carefree before. The load from the warship's weapons was like a drizzle to these humanoid beasts. Although they were not as strong as a Maori and Han Bingning who could wield a warship weapon by themselves, they were still much stronger than the top of the sanctuary realm. This allowed him to completely understand that they had no way out. He did not come to the Sacred Saint Galaxy for a vacation. That woman was not a fool, on the contrary, she was an extremely powerful person. There must be a deeper meaning behind her actions. Like rain falling on a banana leaf, the concentrated sounds of collisions were heard, and fragments flew everywhere. In the blink of the eye, the warship became a beehive filled with densely packed holes. Screams and pools of blood flowed out from the holes. It was a ghastly sight. But in front of them there were only fragments. Wuxia could not understand why. Normally speaking, for a top-grade army with similar strength, unless there was a deep hatred between them after probing a few times, both parties would tacitly leave. The only result of pestering was that both parties would suffer. Truly a ghost that refuses to go away. Niechio also noticed this point, so in his usual training he never asked for accuracy but for synchronization. The synchronization of attacks could form a rain of attacks, causing the enemy to be unable to escape. The lethality would not decrease, but instead become stronger. Accuracy would not be important. Or they would step on the corpses of the Southern Cross Army and return to the Wei Yiguan continent. The Sea of Light disappeared and so did the fleet. Both parties had fought for more than 10 rounds and were evenly matched. Both parties had suffered heavy losses and were extremely fatigued. But the enemy did not have any intention of giving up, and continued to chase and pester them. He sensed a trace of danger. Something must have happened in the Honorable Martial Continent. He did not know what exactly happened, but everything in front of him indicated that something was amiss. That woman has not unified the savage continent yet. Why would she suddenly gather people to attack the Wei Yiguan continent? When he saw the enemy's war flag again, he finally recalled where he had seen it before. What he needed to do now was to immediately return to the Wei Yiguan continent. Wuxia was 100% sure that the army in front of him came from someone. The zero-energy bodies were able to endure far more load than ordinary soldiers. Not only could they increase the frequency of attacks, they could also greatly reduce the number of people required to operate the warship weapons. That meant that the warship could be loaded with even more warship weapons. That was why Kai Si and the rest saw the Honorable Marshal's roar as a porcupine with spikes all over its body. The Honorable Marshal's roar was loaded with a large number of warship weapons, breaking the record of the Sacred Saint Galaxy's warship. But now there was someone who could do it. Before the shattered aura dissipated, the whistling sword auras and blade auras were like sharks that had smelled blood. All of them surged forward and fiercely entered the warship. When the scout's report entered his ears, Wuxia took a deep breath and threw away all the distracting thoughts in his mind. Dense killing intent surfaced in his eyes. He held onto his sword hilt and said, "Prepare for battle." Everyone was startled, and the breathing sounds on the Honorable Marshal's roar became much softer. No matter how good the training was, Xianxia did not place it in his heart. He knew that training was training and actual combat was actual combat. No matter how beautiful the training was, once they entered actual combat, it would be a completely different matter. During the training he was extremely satisfied with the Honorable Marshal's roar's attack power, but he never thought that the battle would be so one-sided. Inside the sea of light, regiments of fiery lights rose and fell. Even Xianxia, who was always calm, was dumbstruck. On a mountain peak in the savage continent, Kaixi's eyes dilated. No. The Null Division members were completely unaware of the shock they had brought to the enemy, just like how they did not think of the profound effect they would have on the Sacred Saint Galaxy. They were extremely focused and all of them were immersed in the thrill of battle. The fighting strength displayed by the zero-energy bodies on the warship had far exceeded his expectations. After understanding the enemy's background and seeing the savage army heading towards the Wei Yiguan continent, Wuxia knew that it was not a coincidence. They're here. He needed to re-evaluate the Null Division's strength. They were powerful, which meant that they could be of greater use. It was the Wei Yiguan continent. Regiments of fiery lights blossomed from time to time in the sea of light. Sword and blade auras that resembled a curtain of rain tore through the sky, causing whistling sounds that shook the soul. The incessant explosions were the most impassioned drumbeats in the chaotic battlefield. It was easy to imagine that the loss of the battle would definitely shake Temple. He was looking forward to how Temple would react if they knew that there was such a powerful warship in their territory. Even more warship weapons, even faster attack frequency, finally forming the sea of light that resembled a rain curtain of attacks. Attack with all their might. Or die. In the chaotic land of the savage continent, such a thing had never happened before. The various tribes of the savage continent all fought for themselves, and between them there were years of chaotic battles. Even if it was an insignificant matter, it could pull open the curtains to a war that lasted for over 10 years. No one had ever been able to unite them. No, it was in the past. No one had ever been able to. When the last regiment of fiery light was blasted into sparks, the Null Division members on the Honorable Marshal's roar finally stopped. They gasped for breath, perspiration flowing down their bodies as they looked at the quiet and empty battlefield. He had seen them before in Temple's report on Heaven's Road, and thus felt that they were somewhat familiar. But when he knew of their origins, he no longer had any thoughts of luck. This mechanical army was not any Gold Continent elites. They were Tang Tian's allies. It must be known that the keel of a mid-scale warship was extremely sturdy, and normally speaking it was difficult to break. That was why Crane was able to borrow the warship wreckage to block Go Qing Wendao's army for so long. What made him even more inconceivable was the direction that the army was heading towards. Everyone was shocked by the destructive power of the Honorable Marshal's roar, including the Null Division members, who were equally dumbstruck. They did not doubt that the final victory belonged to them, but to be able to win so easily made them extremely surprised. A regiment of fiery light soared from the warship, and before the flames had the time to expand, a series of explosions erupted in a short period of time. That mysterious woman. A few of the members were so excited that they took off their clothes. Their faces were filled with excitement, and they released unconscious roars from their mouths. Their bronze sculpture-like robust bodies had perspiration trickling down their bodies. Not long later, their bodies were covered in mist. Their robust bodies, under the contrast of the white mist, were filled with power and beauty. Xianxia suppressed the joy in his heart and went into deep thought. The victory was beneficial to the entire war. Chapter 880. Suddenly, more than one clan elder thought about the report, and all of them felt a chill in their hearts. The Honorable Marshal continent was shaken. Temple was shaken. Countless of exclamations sounded out at the same time. The sacred palace seemed to have exploded. The commotion caused everyone to be stupefied. If there was anyone in the savage continent who could kill Wuxia, Ming felt that it would definitely be the king. Although to Ming the king did not need to be anxious. After unifying the savage continent, there would be a lot of time. Of course, since the king had already decided, Ming would definitely not object. Great Clan Elder. The savage continent was like a large hornet's nest. Whoever provoked it would die. The front lines suffered a series of losses, and Go Qing Wendao's request for reinforcements was received at least 3 times a day. Qiu Su Hua was heavily injured and Mo Xian's whereabouts were unknown. It was dead silence, a deathly silence. Previously everyone was filled with worry, but now they were at ease. All of the clan elders who had seen the report praised in their hearts, as expected of Master Wuxia's insight. They had completely forgotten how they had scoffed at the report when they first saw it. Temple had never fallen into such a desperate situation before. He was rejoicing in their misfortune. Most of the powerful martial artists in the savage continent did not have any good feelings towards Wuxia. Wuxia's plans towards the savage continent could deceive the small tribes, but in front of the powerful martial artists, it was impossible to hide. There were many powerful martial artists secretly looking for Wuxia, but Wuxia was powerful and extremely cautious, so no one had succeeded. The only thing that made the honorable martial continent feel at ease was that the savage continent had never expanded outwards before. All of their strength was spent on internal strife. The savage continent's history was one that had never stopped chaotic wars. This was probably because the savage continent had never been unified before. The imposing and indifferent voice rumbled like thunder, reverberating in the honorable martial palace. The atmosphere immediately became much more relaxed. Since Master Wuxia had already made his move, then there was nothing to worry about. Behind them, the enormous army stretched as far as the eye could see. It was the largest army in the history of the savage continent, and also the largest operation by the newly established Perseus King Court. It was no wonder that Ming was not confident. He had never commanded such a large-scale war before. I am the same as everyone else. I am confident in Master Wuxia. However, I have a piece of bad news for everyone. Charles's expression was unusually serious, and the elder standing close to him even noticed that he clenched his fists so hard that his knuckles turned white. For a full 10 seconds there was no sound. It was as quiet as death. Could it be that this information was true? Taiji did not care. Anyway, we just need to complete His Majesty's orders. His Majesty must have some idea. Do you think that we are more powerful than him? Charles calmed down and laughed. He is now in the savage continent. He killed the Perseus queen. We need to have confidence in him. The elders were in an uproar. Their faces were filled with disbelief. They thought that they had heard wrongly. The enemy's army was pressing down on the border, but the general who was guarding the important place was not here. You think that we can truly break through the Wei Yiguan continent? Ming looked at Taiji. Unfortunately, we just received the news. Charles' face was pale white. The other party used the honorable marshal's roar to modify an ultimate army warship. Its might is astonishing, and Oliver's army's fleet was defeated by this warship. We have not received the details of Colin's army's defeat. The enemy has cut off the star door from the desolate continent to the White Fields continent, and no one from Colin's army has escaped. Furthermore, it was the Wei Yiguan continent, Wuxia's Wei Yiguan continent. What about Master Wuxia? Why is there no news of Master Wuxia? An old clan elder questioned loudly. The group of savages only lacked a leader. This caused the clan elders to be on the verge of collapsing, and they were so anxious that they almost cried. Ming did not understand. Why would the king have designs on the Wei Yiguan continent? If not for the fact that he trusted the king, he would have thought that the other party had ulterior motives. But now the nightmare was happening right in front of their eyes. In such a dangerous situation, only a great general like Wuxia could give them a sense of security. We have just received the news. Under the divine might, no one could stand. The honorable martial continent had ulterior motives towards the savage continent. If not, they would not persevere in infiltrating the savage continent. But that did not mean that the honorable martial continent dared to provoke the savage continent. Even though they always spoke about the savage continent with disdain, but in their hearts, they knew how terrifying the savage continent was. The savage continent that has always been honest, why are they joining in the fun at such a time? How can such a thing happen to him? As long as they had a leader, it would be a nightmare for the honorable martial continent. All of the clan elders seemed to have awoken from their dreams, the panic on their faces had disappeared, and what replaced it was respect and sincerity. They lowered their noble heads and straightened their backs. All of the clan elders revealed looks of enlightenment. That's right, how can Master Wuxia neglect his duties? The clan elders were dumbstruck, they raised their heads, their expressions froze, their eyes opened wide like fish out of the water. Everyone present knelt down on the ground, their bodies trembling. No one knew if it was out of fear or excitement. Wuxia was able to firmly defend the Wei Yiguan continent, and was able to infiltrate the savage continent. It was not because of his popularity but because of his true strength. The savage continent respected the strong, and only believed in the strength of the fist. If not, why would all the small tribes listen to him? Wuxia was the most famous martial artist from the outside world in the savage continent. Very few people knew of his achievements, but no one had ever heard of anyone taking advantage of Wuxia. Temple has reached its most dangerous moment. What was worse was that the savage continent's army had appeared outside the Wei Yiguan continent. It was no wonder that the clan elders were like that. Wuxia's prestige was extremely high, his temperament and conduct were impeccable, he had been conscientious for the past few decades, and had never made a mistake. The honorable martial continent's role model was deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts. Everyone could not help but worry. After a few decades of infiltration, the honorable martial continent's understanding of the savage continent had become much deeper than before. The reason why the savage continent was not viewed as a threat by the honorable martial continent was because they lacked a leader. I do not know if Wuxia is unlucky or not. Taiji shook his head, but in the blink of an eye, the look of schadenfreude on his face became even more obvious. The honorable martial continent is definitely unlucky this time, and it is going to be bloody unlucky. The entire place became silent. The ominous premonition in the clan elders' hearts became even more intense, and the atmosphere that had just relaxed suddenly tensed up. The king did not hesitate to take the risk to run to the honorable martial continent. It was obvious that he had designs on the honorable martial continent. Many of the clan elders could not help but think about the report that Wuxia had sent over previously. It was about a lady, a female war goddess. Wuxia had claimed that her establishment of the Perseus King Court had the possibility of unifying the savage continent. At that time, all of the clan elders snorted at the report. Unifying the savage continent? The thing that no one had done for tens of thousands of years, was actually done by a lady? What a joke. If not for the report being sent over by Wuxia, the clan elders would have long given the order to punish them. All of the urgent requests for reinforcements caused the entire temple to be filled with fear. The clan elders did their best to conceal the nervousness and fear in their hearts. They forced themselves to be cheerful and witty, telling dry jokes and squeezing out exaggerated smiles. But their pale white faces, thick black eye circles, unsteady footsteps, the fog in their eyes that could not dissipate, made their pretenses look like a joke. Charles's face was extremely terrible. He forced out a smile. Master Wuxia has not returned yet. At Ming's level they knew much more and were even more clear of Wuxia's terrifying strength. Colin died in battle. Colin's army was completely wiped out. Oliver's army was ambushed, the fleet. Charles paused for a moment. He took a deep breath as though he was gathering his courage. The entire army was wiped out. Wherever the great clan elder passed, golden holy flames would flow along the ground. The honorable martial palace would rumble, and countless of snowflakes would descend from the sky. The king's enmity towards the honorable martial continent made Ming extremely happy. He felt that it was the king's grand ambitions. The king is definitely not satisfied with unifying the savage continent, and now he has his eyes on the honorable martial continent, truly an ambitious overlord. Just at that moment, a low voice came out from behind Charles, instantly suppressing all of the commotion. A dignified and holy aura enveloped the entire place, as though a god had descended. A figure enveloped in golden holy flames slowly walked out. But a pity that he met the king. Countless of ambitious and ruthless people had fallen in the savage continent, proving that his point of view was correct. The savage continent had never lacked arrogant and untamed people, but the Wei Yiguan continent had always been majestic, as though it was made of gold, firmly guarding the honorable martial continent's throat. Ever since Wuxia had guarded the Wei Yiguan continent, no one had ever broken through it. When the vast and mighty army appeared near the Wei Yiguan continent, all of the soldiers stationed there were completely stunned. His question attracted the attention of all the clan elders, and all of them turned to look at sacred son Charles. That's right, in such a serious situation with such a large army pressing down, Temple actually did not receive a single word from Master Wuxia. But, the savage continent that had never taken the initiative to expand outwards, actually organized an unprecedented large army that appeared outside the Wei Yiguan continent. Charles's voice was gloomy with a trace of sorrow and panic. He looked around. The clan elders quietened down. They looked at sacred son Charles in surprise. In their impression, sacred son Charles was always graceful and unruffled. They had never seen sacred son Charles so serious and nervous. Taiji definitely knew something, but Ming did not ask. Go strike the holy bell. No one doubted if Master Wuxia could do it. Ming thought about it and shook his head. How can that be? The queen is the goddess of war, she is undefeatable. Wuxia is going to be unlucky this time. Many of them had a bad premonition. Chapter 881. I don't know. Melissa shook her head. The holy bell has not been rung for a long time, and it is hard to say how many people will go. However, any family with a little bit of power would probably go. What if Temple comes to settle the score? Even if it is just for show, they will still go. Clang. Melissa, who was beside Tang Tian, covered her mouth. Her eyes were wide open, her face was similarly overwhelmed with shock. Johnson, who was usually calm, had a huge change in his expression at the same time. In Tang Tian's expectations, even if Dooku was unable to defeat the enemy, he would be able to delay them for a period of time. But Tang Tian never expected that not only did Dooku win, it was a huge victory and Colin's army was completely wiped out. Melissa was born in an aristocratic family, and naturally knew more than the average person, she explained. In the past, Temple and the various families signed an agreement, which stated that once Temple rings the holy bell, the various families will come to their aid. But at the same time, once the holy bell is rung, the various families will come to their aid, and all the profits from the war will belong to the various families and Temple cannot touch it. Just like this time, Temple is about to vomit blood. Temple seized the Shang continent and obtained the passage to Heaven's Road. If they do not ring the holy bell, the passage will belong to Temple and Temple will not need to share it with the other families. But now that Temple has rung the holy bell, the passage will no longer belong to Temple, but to the various families. Tang Tian revealed a look of shock. The towering bell that resembled a mountain peak was completely formed from radiant energy. Tang Tian's eyes lit up. Tang Tian, who had long felt that he had thick skin and thick flesh, oh no, copper skin and iron bones, never thought that there would be a day where he would suffer from insomnia. Alright, it is not shameful to lose sleep for Chia. Other people can't even do it if they want to. Seeing that it was not an offensive method, Tang Tian relaxed. The radiant energy that gathered from all directions surged towards a single point, and a white halo lit up in the sky. The energy that surged over increased, and the gigantic white halo grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of the eye, a gigantic white bell that was releasing intense undulations appeared in the sky above the city. When Tang Tian received the results of the battles in the Desolate Continent and Whitefields Continent, he and his God Armor army were already very far away from the Whitefields Continent. Good job. Tang Tian was in a good mood. All the warships, merchant ships and transport ships in the sky stopped. Many people rushed out, their faces filled with shock. Tang Tian did not believe that Temple would give up on the Shang continent, but he could not understand the mystery behind it. Unable to understand, Tang Tian simply stopped thinking about it. Anyway, there were many smart people he could ask Chia or Uncle Bing when the time came. It was not easy to achieve this. Tang Tian suddenly noticed a problem. What about the civilians? Aren't they going to be drafted? His figure disappeared from the cabin. Johnson's tone was filled with emotions. In his eyes, Temple was a supreme existence with deep foundations and unfathomable strength. It was an interesting and practical method. It was already too late for Macefield Tradings to back out, and they could only continue down this path. Melissa naturally hoped for Tang Tian to become stronger. Melissa did not say a word. She thought to herself, "What did you guys do to Temple? Look, Temple is being forced to ring the holy bell." At the same time, the other people's faces changed. They rushed out of the merchant ship without hesitation. As expected of a godlike young lad. Look, with just the influence of this godlike young lad, everyone has become so powerful. She chuckled. Seems like Temple is in deep trouble. Unless it is absolutely necessary, Temple will definitely not ring the holy bell. And the holy bell is not something that can be casually rung. Tang Tian could not help but praise in his heart. Seems like Temple has capable people as well. Against Temple's new army, they had formulated many countermeasures. But they never thought that before their plans were fully executed, the other party would sense the danger, to the point of using the holy bell. Tang Tian thought about it. Out of all of them, only he knew how terrible Temple's situation was. He, Chia and Uncle Bing had discussed it many times, and after being tormented by them, Temple's military strength would be severely lacking. But they only thought that Temple would recruit people to form a new army, and never expected for Temple to directly ring the holy bell. The bell rang thrice, and the gigantic bell crumbled, transforming into countless of white light spots that scattered with the wind, causing snowflakes to fall from the sky. Hearing that, Tang Tian became curious. Why? Commoners. Melissa was surprised, but she immediately dismissed it. What's the use of commoners? The wealth and power are in the hands of the big families, and they are the foundation of Temple's rule. All the commoners who have nothing are worthless. Temple will not care about their lives. Tang Tian stared at the gigantic bell in front of him with a solemn expression. It was his first time witnessing such a method, and the energy contained in the gigantic bell was too astonishing. If it were to explode, Tang Tian was sure that the city below would be flattened. Regardless of Du Ku or Niechio, their performance far exceeded Tang Tian's expectations. Du Ku was fine, but Tang Tian was not too worried. The desolate continent had been dealt with by them, and the energy was sparse, which was suitable for Du Ku's Sin Domain army. Even if the army could not perform well, Du Ku's perverse individual strength was enough to give the enemy a huge problem. Furthermore, beneath the stronghold was the Sin Domain. With Du Ku's unparalleled prestige in the Sin Domain, he could easily mobilize the entire Sin Domain. Tang Tian became pleased again. But he did not linger on the issue and asked, "Is Macefield Tradings within the scope of recruitment?" To Tang Tian, the Holy Bell was the final trump card. The trading ship with the Macefield Tradings insignia flew steadily in the sky, and the city below was clearly visible. According to the plan, they would not stay in the city for long, and needed to quickly rush to the gathering point. Upon thinking about being able to see Chia, Tang Tian's heart burned with passion. Tang Tian immediately understood. The energy in the sky above the city suddenly surged, as though there was an invisible hand stirring the energy of the heaven and earth. Energy converged from all directions, wave after wave, and even white light scars could be seen in the sky. It was a phenomenon created by the friction between the radiant energy, showing how dense the radiant energy was in the region. But very quickly he became complacent. Tang Tian suddenly exclaimed out, his gaze locked onto the place where the energy was the densest and most concentrated. He then asked, "How many people are there?" The citizens of the city below started to come out of their houses. Many of them flew into the sky, but without exception, all of their faces were filled with shock and disbelief. Even though he was pleased, Tang Tian started to think about how the two victories would affect their plans. After thinking about it seriously, Tang Tian quickly realized that the two victories would be of great help to their plans. Melissa also regained her senses and looked at Tang Tian. Johnson was the leader of the guards. There was no need to talk about his battle prowess, but his way of thinking was rather simple. But Melissa thought more about it. She even suspected that Temple's ringing of the holy bell was most likely done by Tang Tian and the rest. Tang Tian did not expect that the two victories would affect Temple so much that it far exceeded his imagination. Who knew that Temple would actually ring the holy bell? "What's going on?" Tang Tian asked curiously. The sound of the bell contained a unique energy undulation, and was able to spread through energy. But what made Tang Tian interested was that the undulation was able to absorb energy along the way and continuously strengthen itself. It was a form of warning. Not only would the sound of the bell not weaken, but it would also become stronger. which meant that the bell could effortlessly spread to every corner of the continent. The people floating in the sky all had solemn expressions, their hearts filled with worry. The city below was in an uproar, countless figures soared into the sky, forming afterimages in the sky as they flew in different directions. Yes, master. Johnson took over. His mental state was much better than Melissa and spoke. The holy bell will only be rung when temple is in danger. When the holy bell is rung, all the families must bring their elites to temple and protect temple. When the Honorable Martial Continent was established, temple had signed this agreement with the various families. At that time, temple was not as strong as it is now and had to rely on the various families. After that, temple became stronger and stronger, and the holy bell never rung again. Who knew that temple would actually ring the holy bell? Seems like temple has been forced into a corner. Melissa's face turned pale white. She was in a daze. That's the holy bell. The melodious bell sound resonated throughout the land. Temple must be having a headache right now. Tang Tian scoffed and started to be pleased. Truly decisive. Just at that moment he suddenly sensed something and opened his eyes. A cold light flashed past. Oh my, I better get up and train. When I get excited I can't sleep. A trace of fear swept past her heart, and her reverence towards Tang Tian deepened. But very quickly she became excited again. The current Macefield Tradings and Tang Tian were tied together, sharing weal and woe. Even though Macefield Tradings was powerful, even the Western Traders, which was a powerful trading organization, was wiped out by temple with just a word. The Western Traders were completely wiped out, and the light that was implicated caused Melissa's heart to turn cold. Temple would definitely not listen to any excuses, and as long as they were implicated, there would only be one outcome. Holy Bell. Tang Tian did not agree with Melissa's point of view. His Ursa Major constellation did not have any big families. Furthermore, Temple's way of thinking made Tang Tian heave a sigh of relief instead. If Dooku made Tang Tian look at him in a different light, then the Honorable Marshal's roar was truly an unexpected surprise. An old ship that had been scrapped for a few hundred years, a group of amateurs who had never controlled a warship before, a brand new and untested tactic, and similarly a brand new and untested technology, actually obtained an absolute victory and wiped out the enemy's fleet. Tang Tian was shocked. How can Temple give up on the Shang continent? Melissa hesitated for a moment, then nodded her head, yes. When Tang Tian saw the report, his jaw almost dropped to the ground. When they rushed out of the trading ship, they coincidentally witnessed an astonishing scene. Oh, that must be it. Chapter 882. Tang Tian was dumbstruck. He was dumbstruck. Tang Tian suddenly thought of a question. Wait a minute. Could it be that all these armies are going to the Saint Continent? When the holy bell had rung yesterday, she had guessed in her heart that it was most likely Tang Tian who had forced Temple into a corner, but she realized that she had still underestimated Tang Tian. All of you are now part of Macefield Trading's internal security army, called the Iron Mask Army. Melissa continued, relax, the organization truly has an Iron Mask Army, but they rarely show themselves outside, so you don't have to worry about being exposed. As long as you do not expose yourselves, you should be safe, but be careful of other armies. Melissa stared at the matchless ship in a daze. Macefield Tradings used to have a gold-grade warship as well. I cannot meet Xie in such a sorry state. That was the first thought that popped up in Tang Tian's mind. But he immediately felt that he was right. He had not seen Xie for so many years, but in the end, Xie saw him being surrounded and beaten up. What she was most worried about was that the group of butchers would not be able to control themselves and slaughter the enemy's army. That would be the true problem. Wouldn't that mean that our plans are ruined? Seems like it is ruined. Furthermore, we are reunited with Xie. How can we waste it on fighting and killing? At the very least, we should reunite and get intimate before fighting and killing. The other party was extremely fast and was obviously rushing towards them. After gathering information, she found out that Tang Tian actually had such a shocking influence in the savage continent. And the Sin domain that had risen from the ashes was also listening to his orders. She was stunned. All of a sudden, Melissa had a strong premonition that this journey would not be smooth sailing. Melissa even knew that Elizabeth Tradings was one of the masterminds behind the crisis of Macefield Tradings. When Melissa spoke, she did not even look at Tang Tian. She was concealing the shock in her heart. One for everyone. Melissa called for everyone to take off their masks, then explained, "Temple is currently extremely tense, we need to be careful. Do not look down on Temple's ability to gather information, it is just that they did not pay enough attention to you previously. Once they start paying attention, your intelligence will quickly reach their hands. Temple will not check every family's army, but we cannot let the cat out of the bag. For example, Jize, your demon blade is too obvious, you need to keep it." When the matchless ship got close, it did not show any signs of slowing down, as though a huge mountain was crashing down on them. With 3 parties working together, even Temple would not be able to handle it. Regardless if it was the Sin domain or the Savage continent, both of them made Temple feel as though a blade was placed on their necks. Tang Tian casually took it. The mask was very simple and there was nothing fancy about it. It was made of a single piece of iron and its color was gray and black. Only the eyes were exposed. Jize nodded and kept his bewitching blade. He knew that his bewitching blade was too eye-catching. Ever since her grandfather decided to rely on Tang Tian, Melissa had been filled with worry. In her heart, Temple's might was as deep and unfathomable as the ocean, as majestic as a sacred mountain. Although Tang Tian was strong, his individual strength was outstanding, the armies under him were elites and behind him was the Southern Alliance. But to her, such strength was only for ordinary powerhouses, and compared to Temple they were on a completely different level. The situation is terrible. Colin's army has been destroyed, and the revival of the Sin domain is unstoppable. All of them have a blood feud with Temple and there is no way to resolve it. The Southern Alliance's front lines are not going smoothly either. It is said that Go Qing Wendao's request for reinforcements has piled up a few tables. But what Temple is most anxious about is the Wei Yiguan continent. The Savage continent's army suddenly appeared outside the Wei Yiguan continent, and the scale is unprecedented. When Temple received the news, all of the clan elders panicked. The atmosphere in the Honorable Martial continent suddenly became tense. The number of warships in the sky had obviously increased. All of the warships with all sorts of insignias made Tang Tian's eyes widen. Even the trading ships and transport ships were filled with people. All of them had fierce glints in their eyes, and with one look, one could tell that they were tigers and wolves. Johnson's eyesight was even better, and from afar he could see the insignias on the warships and his face changed. "Young miss, it's Elizabeth Trading's matchless ship." Tang Tian patted his chest with confidence. "Don't worry, we will definitely not lose. We will definitely not let you lose face." "Damn it. They're not slowing down." Johnson's face changed. It was just that their business had met with a huge problem, and they had no choice but to give up their only gold-grade warship as one of their conditions. "It's extremely lively." Melissa then called for a guard to bring out a chest, and when she opened it, inside were neatly arranged metal masks. She picked one up and threw it to Tang Tian. At such a crucial time, the Savage Continent's army had suddenly arrived, and it was definitely not a coincidence. She thought about the Chia that Tang Tian had mentioned. Isn't she from the Savage Continent? Desperate? This is the rhythm of forcing Temple to their deaths. The armies of the various families had all gathered in the Saint Continent. Tang Tian and the rest had thought of all sorts of ways to make the Saint Continent empty, but their army had suddenly become extremely robust. No wonder Temple wants to ring the holy bell. Melissa's face immediately became gloomy. Beside her, the other members of Macefield Tradings were filled with indignation. Elizabeth Tradings was Macefield Tradings' mortal enemy. Both parties were like fire and water, and for the past few years, Macefield Tradings had been suppressed by Elizabeth Tradings. Elizabeth Tradings had suppressed Macefield Tradings in many ways. Macefield Tradings was declining day by day. Other than because of their own successors, Elizabeth Tradings could be seen everywhere. The holy bell was personally rung by the great clan elder. Because of the worsening situation, the great clan elder had no choice but to end his closed-door training and come out to take charge. Melissa continued, "All the aristocratic families in the Honorable Martial Continent have been mobilized. The Honorable Martial Continent has already entered a state of war, and the prices of the goods on the market have increased by more than 50%. Why is my heart beating so fast? Why are my palms sweating? I can't think of anything. Damn it, why can't I think of anything? Damn it. I'm so nervous, what do I do?" Tang Tian wanted to cry but no tears came out. Alright, he finally had the feeling of shooting himself in the foot. According to their plan, the honorable martial continent would be in flames, and Temple, whose military strength was stretched to the limit, should be running for their lives, and continuously sending more troops to the various battlefields. Like that, Temple would become empty and Tang Tian and the rest would be able to take the chance to attack Temple. Tang Tian was excited. It sounds like it will be very lively. That's too embarrassing. Tang Tian felt that it was worse than killing him and he was unable to accept it. There were no problems with the plan, but no one expected for the great clan elder to ring the holy bell. Melissa was shocked by Tang Tian's expression and asked weakly, "Is something wrong?" "It's decided." Tang Tian reacted, "But why am I so slow to react?" "Alright, it seems more normal." Tang Tian naturally threw the vexation to the back of his head. Since he was about to meet Chia soon, he could just leave the complicated problem to Chia. The distance between the two parties quickly decreased. The matchless ship's astonishing body became bigger and bigger in everyone's eyes, causing Melissa's face to turn green. The matchless ship was Elizabeth Trading's strongest warship, and was a gold-grade warship. Temple did not have strict control over armies, and every family and trading organization could build their own armies. But for warships, especially the powerful gold-grade warships, they had strict restrictions on their owners. Yes. Melissa nodded her head. Temple is in the Saint Continent, and only the Saint Continent can hold so many armies. That was Melissa's most painful memory, and it was on that day that her grandfather, who had always been healthy, suddenly seemed to have aged by 10 years. Melissa laughed bitterly. With so many armies gathered together, it is easy for something to happen. Furthermore, the various families are fighting in the open and in the dark, so how can we see each other's trump cards? Now that we have the chance, it is normal for us to test it out. Everyone, do not be too nervous. Winning or losing does not matter. Do not let your emotions affect your decisions. Do not use your usual fighting style, it will easily arouse suspicion. At that time we will be in trouble. Every single employee of Macefield Tradings knew of Elizabeth's ambition to swallow up Macefield Tradings. Only the families that were officially recognized by Temple had the qualifications to own gold-grade warships. If they did not obtain Temple's recognition, regardless if they were to purchase or build a gold-grade warship, they would be punished by Temple. Melissa almost blurted out, "Don't worry about it, just let me be embarrassed." Tang Tian's face changed. He thought of another important question. How am I going to be intimate with Chia at that time? Right at that moment, Johnson noticed the situation behind them. A warship was quickly approaching them. Wait a minute. The gigantic warship cast a shadow that enveloped the small trading ship like a dark cloud. Melissa saw that after Tang Tian put on his mask, he had sunk into deep thoughts and finally heaved a sigh of relief. Seems like he finally realized the importance of the problem, and knows the consequences of exposing his identity. Since that's the case, he will definitely treat it seriously. As long as Tang Tian treated it seriously, Melissa believed that it would not be a problem. She knew how terrifying his strength was. But she was helpless. Tang Tian and Chia's rendezvous point was in the Saint Continent. The Saint Continent was the capital of the Honorable Martial Continent, and because of Temple's existence, it was called the Saint Continent. Temple's most sacred ground, the Honorable Martial Palace, was also in the Saint Continent. The Saint Continent was located in the center of the Honorable Martial Continent, and was the largest and most flourishing continent in the Honorable Martial Continent. As long as it was a large trading organization or a slightly reputable family, they would have a branch in the Saint Continent. Be careful of other armies? Tang Tian was surprised. Could it be that someone is looking for trouble? Why did grandfather choose Tang Tian? After thinking it through, Tang Tian started to think about Melissa's words, and felt that it made sense. If they were to clash and their identities were exposed, then they would be surrounded and beaten up. Chapter 883. Claudia watched in shock as the masked fellows stood up one by one and stared at her with unkind expressions, their killing intent soaring. She was confused and did not understand why. Melissa, who had always been a virtuous lady, could not help but scold them. Her face was ashen, her eyes were spewing fire, her fists were clenched so tightly that they turned white. This is too much. The matchless ship did not have any intentions of slowing down, and continued to charge forward. If they were to collide, the trading ship would definitely be smashed into pieces. "Ha, isn't this Miss Melissa?" The last time, Melissa was not respectful to Tang Tian, and was almost killed by them. It was an extremely dangerous experience and left a deep impression on her. Thus, even though the group of despicable fellows were praising Claudia without restraint, Melissa suppressed the anger in her heart. Then the task of teasing beauties will be handed to us, the ordinary and vulgar fellows. I am complaining on behalf of everyone here. Claudia reacted quickly and immediately changed to a confused expression. With everyone's strength and status, this trading ship is truly too shabby. Even if we don't talk about gold-grade warships, we should at least have a top-grade silver-grade warship. Is this how Macefields Trading treats everyone? I am truly unable to tolerate everyone receiving such cold treatment, so I will say it out loud in front of Miss Melissa. If everyone is willing to join my trading organization, this young lady is willing to double the treatment provided by Macefields Trading. I believe that with everyone's strength, you are all worthy of such treatment. This way, this young lady can seek guidance every day. It can be considered as fulfilling this young lady's selfishness. Melissa was so angry that her entire body was trembling, but she did not flare up. She did not dare flare up because she knew how terrifying they were, how temperamental they were, how cold-blooded they were, and how they viewed human lives as grass. Asshole. The mission of saving the world belongs to Master. The captain of the trading ship was experienced, and upon seeing the matchless ship, he had a bad premonition and had made preparations. When he realized that the other party was charging towards them, he immediately made a decision and fiercely swerved the ship. The ship released a screeching sound and the moving trading ship made a large turn. Melissa clenched her teeth. Claudia. Her eyes became blurred and her voice became softer and softer with a hint of surprise. I've long heard of your fame. I wonder if I can ask you for a small favor? In this world, only one person is qualified to recruit us. No matter how you looked at it, Claudia was a great beauty. Claudia's eyes lit up when she noticed that Melissa was angry but restrained. As an old rival of Macefield Tradings, she naturally knew that Macefield Tradings had a mysterious Iron Mask army, and it was said that this army was Macefield Tradings' final trump card. I really didn't expect this. Jizai's tone was flat. Melissa, who witnessed the scene, could no longer hold it in and laughed out loud. No. Jizai shook his head and said calmly, I'm just a little surprised. Claudia's expression froze, and then her face was full of resentment and fear. If you don't board the ship, what if someone sneaks into the room? At least he did not forget their disguises. The other team members around him immediately puffed out their chests and raised their heads, putting on an attitude of, who else but me can do it? Jizai thumped his chest so loudly that it shook the heavens. To serve a beauty, I will never say no. Johnson's reaction was much faster. He shot forward to the pilot house. He shouted anxiously, dodge. Quickly dodge. Companions. His gaze was filled with sympathy, disdain, and contempt. His tone of voice was indifferent without a trace of warmth. He was clearly standing below, but it was as though he was looking down on them. I am surprised that someone actually dares to recruit us. Truly a bunch of idiots. The last sentence was filled with an indescribable temptation. Claudia's eyes flashed with an indescribable charm. No wonder Melissa was so angry, but still tried her best to restrain herself. It seems like the rumors were not wrong. The Iron Mask army was Macefield Trading's final trump card. Furthermore, from the looks of it, Melissa and the Iron Mask army did not seem to have a good relationship. If not, why would the Iron Mask army treat Melissa as if she was nothing? The members of the God Armor army discussed fervently. In truth, Melissa was also a great beauty, but she was too pure. Claudia, who was like a blazing flame in front of them, made the wild beasts even more excited. It's not really recruitment, I just don't want a pearl to be covered in dust. Claudia smiled charmingly. Jizai's hand had already touched the blade hilt at his waist. When he suddenly thought about Melissa's words about the bewitching blade being too dazzling, he released the hilt. Coincidentally, he saw Claudia's startled face and laughed. You should not have committed such a taboo. Jizai said as a matter of fact, you can come to our ship. Jizai, who was wearing a mask, could not tell if he was happy or angry. Claudia had a pair of sparkling and translucent red pupils. Her charm was like spring water. Her exquisite and beautiful face did not have any flaws. Her warm and moist red lips were extremely alluring, and her smile was filled with an indescribable evil aura of ridicule. What are you surprised about? Claudia asked subconsciously. A voice filled with ridicule and insolence came out from above everyone's head. A beautiful young lady stood on the railing of the matchless ship, her bright red dress fluttering in the air like a rose in full bloom. Hearing their unbridled discussion and praising Claudia, Melissa's face became as black as a pot. But she did not say a word. They were a group of wild beasts, butchers, killing machines. All of them were arrogant and untamed and extremely dangerous. If anyone dared to point fingers at them or get angry at them, they would not rest until they were dead. In their eyes there were no rules, no taboos, no fear. They only had Tang Tian in their eyes. Only Tang Tian could order them, and even berate or scold them they did not care. Oh my God, is she seducing me with that gaze? I can't hold it in anymore. Claudia was overjoyed. That's great. With everyone here, this young lady can finally have a good night's sleep. The matchless ship is spacious and stable. Why don't everyone come up and have a chat? I can get closer to all of you. It was different from the arrogant ridicule from before. Her voice was extremely soft and seductive, as though there was a small claw scratching at everyone's hearts. Hearing that, Jizai felt that it was nothing and immediately replied, "No problem." Seeing Jizai's gaze, she resisted the urge to laugh. "We welcome Miss Claudia. Our ship is still the safest. With them around, Claudia can be assured of her safety. If there's a need, I can give my room to Miss Claudia." Claudia was extremely understanding of Melissa. She immediately noticed Melissa's patience, but in her eyes, it was another interpretation. Jizai, who was filled with bashfulness, stepped forward and coughed lightly. "That's right, we are the Iron Mask Army with extraordinary strength." Claudia was startled, then laughed. "I am just giving everyone a treatment that matches your strength. Our Chamber of Commerce is thirsty for talent. In this aspect we are naturally very different from some declining Chamber of Commerce." Jizai looked at Tang Tian, who did not move, as though he did not notice the movements around him. Jizai already had a deep understanding of Tang Tian, and was long used to Tang Tian's habit of completely ignoring the surroundings. But he could not help but be filled with respect. As expected, only a person like Master, who is focused on his own world, is able to not be disturbed by the outside world, and thus can obtain such great achievements. Melissa was no longer angry. She watched coldly from the side. Truly, the boss will bring out the same kind of troops. Jizai's action of patting his chest was exactly the same as Tang Tian's. If it was in the past, she would definitely be infuriated, but now that her horizons had been broadened, she was no longer the Melissa who threw a tantrum. Claudia was familiar with her, but she was also familiar with Claudia, and could roughly guess Claudia's intentions. Claudia looked down from above, her black hair fluttering in the wind, but she did not care and continued to ridicule. "Since when did our Miss Melissa become like a stray dog? Truly is surprising. Such a broken ship, how can it be worthy of our esteemed Miss Melissa? How about it? Considering the terrible situation of Macefield Tradings, our matchless ship can give Miss Melissa a free ride. This is a gold-grade warship, our adorable Miss Melissa. You have long forgotten what it feels like, ha?" She was extremely pleased in her heart. As long as the Iron Mask Army boarded the matchless ship, they would completely break off their relationship with Melissa, and who knew, they might even be able to obtain the elite. Claudia's voice was extremely pitiful. "Recently, the road has not been safe and there have already been a few fights. Although this young lady has a warship, but in truth I do not have many guards and cannot sleep well at night. I wonder if this young lady can travel with all of you? For peace of mind." Claudia's expression froze on her face. Her indifferent words were filled with killing intent, as though the bright and beautiful sky was suddenly filled with dark clouds. A violent gale blew, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. "You want to recruit us? To the matchless ship?" Jizai was startled. He shook his head. "Not going." Truly a flirtatious little seductress. Jizai could not help but whistle. Even in the Sin domain, such a beautiful and flirtatious woman was rarely seen. Melissa's face became darker and darker. She was so angry that she was about to explode. She never thought that they would have such resistance towards beauty. Seeing how easily they were seduced by Claudia, she knew that Claudia was doing it on purpose to make things difficult for her. The trading ship barely scraped the side of the matchless ship, but following that, the trading ship was like a leaf swaying in the wind, and was forcefully pushed over 10 m away by the high-speed matchless ship. Melissa was laughing in her heart. She suddenly laughed sweetly and asked Jize and the rest, "You guys are the Iron Mask Army?" She sneered in her heart. She knew that there was a good show to watch. She was extremely pleased. Even if she could not incite the Iron Mask Army to defect, she could still cause a rift between them and Macefield Tradings. She enjoyed the thrill of flipping the clouds while chatting and laughing. Whoa, what a beautiful girl. Chapter 884. Woo 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 woo, my body is always so honest. In Jize's eyes, Tang Tian was the strongest man in the world, the most heroic man and the person that he admired the most. But Fu Jingji was much older than Jize and was experienced, so his temper was naturally not as big. When Claudia opened her mouth to recruit them, he only felt that it was a joke, but was not as angry as Jize. You actually dared to flatter me in front of my boss. I never thought that Jize, who looked like a brainless man, would actually be so proficient in flattering people. Fu Jingji immediately felt that he had met his match. Look at this powerful and resolute expression of loyalty, coupled with this unyielding, no, it's the killing intent of being humiliated. This is truly the performance of a best actor. It can be said to be a stroke of genius. I truly underestimated him. Become someone else's subordinate? What a joke. Jize did not feel that it was some bullshit honor but felt that he was being humiliated. What Tang Tian had won over Jize was not only his fists. Even Melissa was dumbstruck. One could imagine how Claudia was completely dumbstruck. What the hell is going on? Even if you are not willing, there is no need to fight and kill. Alright, even if you feel that I am humiliating you and want to fight and kill, why are you doing such a mushy and emotional thing? His impression of Melissa was extremely bad. At the start, Melissa was arrogant and conceited, causing him to have killing intent. Jize felt that Melissa's grandfather was not bad. He had good eyesight and was tactful and decisive. After that, although Melissa became more obedient, but Jize could still feel that she was not sincere in joining their side, and always left some leeway for him. Jize was an untamed and arrogant person, but he was extremely stubborn. Upon deciding to truly serve Tang Tian, he would not hold anything back. Towards Melissa's way of doing things, he did not hate it, but he did not like it. Claudia felt that she was being played. That's right, it must be Melissa, that bitch, purposely doing this to make a fool out of me. Her face was flushed and she was flustered and exasperated. She had never suffered such a big loss in her life. Furthermore, it was in front of Melissa. An unprecedented shame and anger filled her heart. Her dark red eyes lit up with a bright red light due to her agitation. All of her disguise had completely disappeared and she screamed out, "Kill them! Kill them for me!" What a pity, a waste of expressions. Little Zay, let me teach you another lesson as a senior. When you waste expressions, then drag everyone with you to waste them. Slightly awkward silence, a complete awkward silence. Fu Jingji used his hands to fix his mask. A cold light aura flashed past his eyes. But when Jize said those words with righteousness, that's right, in Fu Jingji's eyes, Jize was righteousness. The howling wind from high up in the sky blew everyone into a mess. But who was Claudia? Yes, an insult. Everyone in the God Armor army were all dumbstruck. Jize, who was initially brimming with killing intent, was dumbstruck. He was also stunned by the scene. So the Holy Bells ban also had some leeway. As long as no lives were lost, Temple would not care. He calmly rearranged his expression. The red rims of his eyes returned to normal in the blink of an eye, and his tone did not reveal any abnormalities. We just rejected young Miss Claudia's invitation and displayed our determination to forever follow Master. Everyone feels the same way and agrees with it. His eyes immediately turned red, his entire body trembled, as though he was angered to the point that he was trembling. He spoke with a hoarse voice. To humiliate us in front of Master in the name of recruiting, that is unforgivable. Even if Temple comes, they will not be able to stop our determination to follow Master. Even if the mountains are barren, the rivers are dry, even if the winter thunder rumbles, the summer rain and snow, even if the heavens and earth merge together, even if the heavens and earth become barren, even if we are at the ends of the earth, our determination to follow Master will never waver. To live is Master's man. To die is Master's ghost. Furthermore, Tang Tian was a huge benefactor to the entire Sin domain. That's right, it was a huge benefactor. Without Tang Tian, would the Sin domain be able to break out of the cage? This was something that even Dooku had to admit. And didn't you see how Dooku did not hesitate to rely on Boss? This huge benefactor cannot be avoided. Melissa wanted to cover her face, so embarrassing. And it was in front of Claudia. Oh my God, why did I have to make them disguise as the Iron Mask Army? The reputation of the Iron Mask Army, the reputation of Macefield Tradings. To be recruited by such a person, Zhou was willing. When Claudia's words came out, whoosh, the guards who were already impatient soared into the air, leaping out from the side of the ship and pouncing towards the trading ship below. It was a completely subconscious action. The long period of demonic training had left behind a shadow, and had long become their instincts. Melissa and Claudia were once again dumbstruck, but their reactions were completely different. In his heart, there was only one person in the entire world who had the qualifications to recruit him, and that was Tang Tian. Zhou did not submit to Tang Tian from the start. On the contrary, he was initially shocked by Tang Tian's strength, and temporarily lowered his head in the face of death, but in his heart he had always been planning to escape. Claudia, who had always felt that he had seen the world and had the confidence to handle all sorts of situations, suddenly felt that he did not know what to do. In the Sin domain, whoever wanted to obtain a powerful inheritance would be afraid of others finding out about it. But Tang Tian did not. The heavy demonic execution was such a powerful thing, yet he actually imparted it to everyone without holding back. He was never greedy for treasures. Not only would he not be jealous of his subordinates' treasures, but he was extremely generous to everyone. The Death Thumb Ring was a powerful treasure and he gave it away just like that. He helped them refine their treasures, and if he had any enlightenment he would immediately share it with everyone. If it was a young man like Zhou, he would definitely feel embarrassed. But who was Fu Jingji? Fu Jingji's body froze. Could it be that master actually did not see my performance just now? Melissa's face changed. Claudia, you dare. Holy Bell Prohibition. Under the Holy Bell, anyone who dares to fight amongst themselves will be killed without mercy. He clenched his teeth and used all of his strength to shout out the last sentence. But with so many families gathered together and many of them had accumulated generations of hatred between them, how could there not be any conflicts? Claudia revealed a ferocious smile. Break their legs. Slap everyone 50 times. Melissa was dumbstruck. This. Claudia was stunned. The Holy Bell had not been rung for a long time, and there were many rules that everyone had long forgotten. But with Melissa's reminder, she suddenly remembered about the Holy Bell Prohibition. The ringing of the Holy Bell meant that Temple was in a dangerous situation, and at such a time, any internal strife would weaken Temple's strength. Thus there was the Holy Bell Prohibition. Tang Tian's face was filled with shock as he looked at the dumbstruck crowd. He obviously did not understand what had happened. All of them were proud members of the God Armor Army, but now that someone had suddenly appeared and wanted to recruit them, it would be weird if everyone's faces were good. Like Fu Jingji, he had the identity of a patriarch, and in terms of family history he was much older than the Elizabeth Tradings that had appeared out of nowhere. Crafty, too crafty. Shameless, too shameless. Tang Tian was moved. He suddenly stood up and spoke excitedly. Good, we will fight together forever. Claudia's recruitment had once again touched his most taboo, and the anger in his heart could be imagined. But as time passed he was slowly convinced by Tang Tian. His inhumanly powerful strength and jaw-dropping improvement speed caused Zhou's competitive spirit to quickly dissipate. To him, even the #1 man of Sin Domain, Dooku, was definitely not Tang Tian's opponent. Hey, what are all of you doing? Everyone almost vomited. All of them who were extremely excited in their hearts had never thought that they would be implicated, and all of them cursed at Fu Jingji in their hearts. But when Tang Tian's gaze swept past them, everyone's heart trembled. They subconsciously stood up straight, puffed out their chests and raised their heads. They did not look sideways, their movements were extremely uniform, and they all nodded their heads in unison, their tone as firm as steel. We will forever follow Master. Especially when he suddenly reacted, boss is still by the side. Claudia suddenly had a misconception, that he was the brothel keeper who separated his lover, the evil tyrant who separated a pair of lovers. But it was clearly just recruitment. It was not only him, the other members of the God Armor Army also had ugly expressions. They had followed Tang Tian for a long time, and naturally had a sense of arrogance. This arrogance was not from Tang Tian's arrogance, but from the days and nights of interacting with the most peak martial techniques, completing the harshest training and obtaining victory after victory. All of these accumulated. In the sky, one after another, figures with killing intent descended from the sky. But since Tang Tian felt that it did not matter, he could not do anything. Since he did not like them, he naturally could not be bothered to give Melissa face, which was why he dared to take liberties with Claudia. Tang Tian was enlightened and turned to look at everyone. Jizai was convinced. He knew that he could not be so magnanimous. For the null division, Tang Tian completely disregarded his own safety, and nearly flipped the entire Sin domain upside down. At that time, Tang Tian was not as powerful as he was today, but he dared to make the entire Sin domain his enemy. Such bravery and loyalty made Jizai admire him from the bottom of his heart. Jizai squinted his eyes. He did not conceal his killing intent and sneered behind his mask. Why is it that upon leaving the Sin domain, all the women that I meet do not know the immensity of heaven and earth? In such a dazzling stage under the gaze of the master, how can I let you be so lonely? Come, little Zai, let me, as your senior, use a beautiful performance to tell you. In terms of being shameless, you are still too inexperienced. Tang Tian, who was immersed in his own world, was oblivious to the clamor of the outside world. He had always been like that. As long as he was immersed in his own world, no matter how noisy the surroundings were, it would not affect him. But when the surroundings suddenly became quiet, it caused him to wake up. Geniuses like Jizai had always been arrogant and unbridled. To them, being the number one under the heavens was their only goal, and even if they could not be number one now, their future goal would definitely be number one. Even the number one person of Sin domain, Dooku, was the same. Jizai could admit that Dooku was currently stronger than him, but he would never think that he would be weaker than Dooku in the future, much less accept Dooku's recruitment. Chapter 885. It seems to be a miniature war formation. Interesting. Upon thinking about how she acted like a clown, she was so angry that her entire body started to tremble. Looking at the Iron Mask army in a different light was just something she did on a whim. The feeling of being betrayed in front of me, that feeling must be extremely great. It will definitely leave a deep impression on Melissa. But towards battles she had never retreated. Furthermore, to dare to be so arrogant in front of me, she must be tired of living. Bang. She did not even place Melissa in her eyes. No one could stop the decline of Macefield tradings. Regardless of whether it was using the warships to suppress the enemy or ridiculing Melissa, she was unbridled. She did not even place the Iron Mask army in her eyes. Elizabeth Tradings had many elite armies, so what was an Iron Mask army to them? Just based on 100 people, how could they threaten Elizabeth Tradings? What a joke. Master Hank had actually decided to use a war formation. The trained war formations could finally be used in actual battles, causing everyone to be excited. But when he observed carefully, he did not discover anything, as though the sense of danger was just a misperception. Hank and the rest were all covered in mist, and before their perspiration could flow, it would evaporate. At that time I will be able to enjoy the ugly looks of them kneeling and begging for mercy. The power of the seal continued to increase and no one dared to hold back. The Iron Mask leader inside the forbidden hoop was like a wild beast that had fallen into a berserk state and gradually calmed down. From his trembling body, it could be seen that he had not given up on struggling, but because the power of the seal was too strong, it was suppressing him. Hank took the initiative to make a move, causing the other bodyguards to become excited. The enraged Claudia wanted to tear them to shreds. Even if she had to start a war with Macefield Tradings, she did not care. What is Macefield Tradings? They don't even have a gold warship. They are not worthy of having so much wealth. After training in the war formation for so long, they did not know how powerful it was. But is there a need for a war formation? When Hank brought them to surround Tang Tian, they knew that the opponent was the man in front of them. They had seen the other people expressing their loyalty to Tang Tian, and knew that the man in front of them was the leader of the Iron Mask army. However, he soon realized that he was also being targeted by others. A small group of guards appeared in front of him. When had he ever been so disgraced as he was today? It was simply unforgivable. Although most of them felt that Boss Hank was making a mountain out of a molehill, they still followed the usual training and did not dare to be negligent. It was not because of the young lady's anger. Hank's status was high, and he only needed to ensure Claudia's safety. As for Claudia's feelings, it was not within his scope of responsibility. In the beginning he was watching the show as well, and he laughed in his heart indifferently towards his young Mrs. Foolish actions. But out of safety considerations he habitually observed the other party. Tang Tian snickered. Before his smile faded he suddenly moved. Magical energy shot out from the tip of his feet, leaving afterimages behind. Like a bolt of lightning he directly charged into the enemy's troops. Claudia's beautiful eyes were filled with viciousness. Her heart was boiling with murderous intent. When Hank reminded them to prepare the battle formation they were even more excited. In the Sacred Saint Galaxy, where armies ruled tactics, formations, synchronization, these were things that everyone had interacted with since young and were extremely familiar with. But army formations used to protect people and the like were not useful. The guards emphasized on individual strength, and their battle formation was specially designed by Hank and was much more flexible. When he saw the situation clearly he was startled. Is he even human? Such power! One of the guards exclaimed. Tang Tian's reaction shocked them, their eyes blurred, and an afterimage appeared in front of them. The halo above his head shot down a pillar of light that enveloped Tang Tian. Tang Tian, who was in the pillar of light, was like an insect in amber, not moving at all. Tang Tian felt as though he had sunk into a swamp. The air around him suddenly congealed, and every movement he made became extremely slow and difficult. What surprised him even more was that the energy around him had become like a swamp. It was the first time Tang Tian had encountered such a situation. His god fist could extract the laws of an area, and thus achieve the effect of freezing space. But the group of people in front of him had a completely different formation. Not only could their formation change the density of the air, it could also greatly reduce the activity of energy. A circular halo flew out from Hank's hand, and the others flicked their fingers at the same time, causing 10 formless undulations to spread out, causing the halo to expand. As expected, Tang Tian became even more interested. It was an extremely perfect energy synchronization, and it was different from the energy synchronization of an army. Break their legs and slap each of them 50 times. If not for Boss Hank's prestige among them, they would have long stopped training. It was rare for Boss Hank to personally come out. Could it be that the opponent had some powerful character? But very quickly his face changed. He felt that they were imprisoning a powerful wild beast, and the opponent was struggling with all his might, waves of terrifying power continuously striking their forbidden hoop. If he were to face such a powerful force alone, the forbidden hoop would have long been torn to shreds. But she quickly laughed and slowly released her fists. These idiots, don't they know that in front of absolute power, such methods are useless and will only make them wish they were dead? Hank was extremely confident in the formation that he had designed. It was called the Forbidden Hoop, and was originally a martial technique that Hank had comprehended himself. But he quickly realized that a single person's strength was not enough to unleash the power of the Forbidden Hoop. Thus he designed it to be used for around 10 men. Sensing that they had completely sealed the opponent, Hank heaved a sigh of relief. Once the seal was completed, the Forbidden Hoop would continuously absorb the surrounding energy and become stronger. Tang Tian was startled for a moment. He felt that the world was changing too quickly, and was only distracted for a moment. For the sake of supporting Temple, Elizabeth Tradings had sent out all their elites, and the entire warship was filled with elites, true elites. Isn't dealing with such a small broken trading ship a piece of cake? As long as I wait for a while, my bodyguards will send all of them to me. Claudia felt as though she had been slapped in the face, and furthermore, it was in front of Melissa. That fellow from the Iron Mask army did it on purpose. It was a plot from the start. All of them wanted to make things difficult for me from the start. Tang Tian's body leaned forward, his hands protecting his head. His upper body had shrunk into a ball, as though he was a wild beast that was burying its head and sprinting. If not for the Holy Bell's band, she would not let a single one of them off and kill them all. Without thinking, he used his elbows to protect his chest. The surging energy surged into his arms, and a light screen energy shield appeared in front of him. The faces of the other bodyguards changed. They initially thought that Hank was making a big fuss over a minor issue, but only at that moment did they realize that they had met with a tough opponent. Almost instantaneously, another guard replaced the injured guard's position. Not only did Hank not relax, he became even more vigilant. He knew that the sense of danger that he felt was not an illusion, and he trusted his own intuition. This made him extremely cautious, and when Claudia gave the order to take action, he hesitated for a moment, but still decided to take the initiative. Damn the Holy Bell restriction. But they had trained in the formation for a long time. but they did not even have the chance to use it once. They were powerful and experienced, and ordinary people from Elizabeth Tradings did not dare to provoke them. Hank was the leader of Claudia's bodyguards, and he rarely took action. Claudia's father doted on her a lot, and the bodyguards by her side were extremely powerful. Every single one of them was hired with a huge sum of money. Basically, any situation could be resolved by a few bodyguards, and Hank did not even need to take action. Only at that moment did Hank have the time to pay attention to the others. Tang Tian's afterimage collided with the energy shield. Tang Tian exclaimed in surprise. His gaze swept past the bodyguards and immediately noticed their formation. She was extremely confident in her own charm, and compared to directly mocking Melissa and toying with Melissa in the palm of her hand, she enjoyed the pleasure even more. In a flash he had rushed into the air. Furthermore, when his gaze swept past Tang Tian, he suddenly sensed a dangerous aura. The bodyguard facing Tang Tian only felt his vision distorting and his face changed. It was a phenomenon caused by the rapid movement of the air. The opponent's speed has actually reached such a terrifying level. Huh. Tang Tian revealed a look of surprise. Synchronized energy undulation. Alright, the leader of the Iron Mask army is barely qualified. But they actually dare to clamor about what qualifications she has to recruit them. The bodyguards were dressed differently from the rest. They were dressed entirely in black. Their gazes were cold, and without saying a word, their ferocious auras leaked out. The leader of the group was expressionless, as though he was still asleep, but when his eyes opened and closed, an ominous glint flashed past, causing people's hearts to tremble. The clear and crisp sound of glass shattering made the bodyguard feel as though a heavy hammer had fiercely smashed onto his chest. What a powerful technique! Tang Tian could not help but exclaim in admiration. He groaned, fresh blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth and his body was flung out. The rest of their faces congealed. They continued to increase their own energy undulations, and still maintained the perfect synchronization. The light aura from the forbidden hoop became brighter and brighter. The light pillar was so dense that it looked like it had substance. She clenched her fists tightly. She had decided that even if she could not kill them today, she would definitely not let them go. It was obvious that if a sacred Saint Galaxy martial artist were to encounter such a situation, they would instantly lose their fighting strength. The energy outside the forbidden hoop was isolated, and the energy inside the forbidden hoop was uncontrollable. The sacred Saint Galaxy martial artist's fighting strength would be greatly reduced. Adding the forbidden air, they could only wait to be captured. Tang Tian gave out the same order, and with that his figure flashed and rushed towards Claudia. To capture the bandits, one must first capture the ringleader. He did not like Claudia, so he decided to capture her first. Furthermore, this ship is not bad. Chapter 886. Hank had never thought of the Sin domain, but it was not his fault. Even though the Sin domain's revival had shaken the entire honorable martial continent, but there was very little information regarding the Sin domain. Even Temple did not know what was happening in the depths of the Sin domain. Their understanding of the Sin domain was still stuck at a few hundred years ago. Hank would never have thought that there would be such a cruel place like the Sin domain, where for people to survive they had to fight, they had to keep fighting. There was no luck to speak of. The battles that they had experienced in their lives was something that the citizens of the honorable martial continent could never imagine. The so-called rich battle experience in the sacred Saint Galaxy was nothing in the Sin domain. Hank was dumbfounded. He had never seen such a scene before. However, he had to admit that such a head-on battle without any fancy tricks really made his blood boil. Bang bang bang. It seemed that 500 people were still not enough. Johnson continuously ordered the guards of the Chamber of Commerce to catch any of their members who fell. His expression was equally nervous. He did not know why Jizé and the others would choose such a method of battle that did not require any techniques. They clearly had the upper hand earlier, and as long as they persevered, defeating the enemy was only a matter of time. In the end, Jizé and the others acted as if nothing had happened. The other party's energy barrier did not shatter, but he seemed to be drunk, spinning and swaying as he floated towards the ground. His eyes were shrewd and sharp, and he already had some doubts in his heart. With this comparison, he quickly made a new discovery. His face became paler and paler. His calm face revealed a trace of shock, and his forehead was covered in sweat. Hank had always been proud of his superb combat instincts, but A chill ran down Hank's spine. If a team member was in danger, as long as they stopped their own attacks, they could resolve the crisis. However, they still chose to attack, which showed how much trust they had in their teammates. If it was just one or two of them, it could be attributed to the tacit understanding of the members, but for them to appear so frequently, there could only be one reason: the Iron Mask army would definitely use such tactics during their daily training. The endless muffled sounds were like muffled thunder, constantly exploding in the sky, causing everyone's ears to go numb. In comparison, the Iron Masked Protector's synchronization rate was barely passable, and their tactics were also very simple. However, their powerful individual strength made up for these weaknesses. A group of people roared as they pounced on the other party. Alright, that was only because Sir was worried that their identities would be exposed. This was clearly a tactic. The matchless ship was already in an uproar. All of the bodyguards on board were shouting and cheering for their companions, occasionally exclaiming in surprise. Hank firmly believed in his own judgment, and it was such a basic judgment. How could he be wrong? Was there something that he hadn't noticed? Hank, on the other hand, was not in a hurry to step forward. Instead, he widened his eyes in fear of missing a single detail. Due to the Holy Bell's prohibition, the other party was obviously a little restrained. One side was ferocious like a wolf and a tiger, while the other side was timid and restrained. In a brawl like this where no one was allowed to kill, the most important thing was momentum. The second most important thing was not tactical cooperation or technique, but the body. In any case, he couldn't kill them, so it would depend on who could last longer. Obviously, those with stronger bodies could last longer. But how was that possible? There was actually someone who would formulate such a dangerous tactic and even use it as a common tactic. From Hank's point of view, this kind of cooperation was extremely powerful and could help them control the rhythm of the battle. However, it required an extremely high level of tacit understanding, and it was very dangerous. The slightest bit of carelessness and the reinforcements from his teammates were half a step late, and if they didn't die, they would be heavily injured. Just like that, the curtains of an unprecedented collision began. Such a tactic was like walking on a tightrope. If there was a single mistake, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. All of the steel mask protectors that were flying around in the sky, all of their fighting instincts were not inferior to his. The more he watched, the more shocked he became. How can Macefield Tradings have so many experts? Hank was truly startled. Zhou and the rest were charging forward like a herd of wild bulls. Everyone's eyes lit up. It was a good method. It was not easy to die, and it was extremely satisfying, causing their blood to boil. Thus, they imitated Zhou and rushed forward with the energy barrier. Seeing that, the other party did not show any weakness. Come on then, 5 of us can't even fight against one? Other than that, the other party's coordination was extremely outstanding. It could be seen that they had a high level of tacit understanding. It was an extremely mature team, and the members trusted each other. Hank had already seen it a few times. They acted as though they did not see the incoming attacks and continued with their own rhythm. Whenever they were about to be hit, there would always be a teammate that would appear out of nowhere and help them resolve the crisis. Intuition. All of these steel mask protectors had astonishing fighting instincts. They were always able to sense danger in advance, allowing them to avert danger at the most crucial moment, allowing them to handle the situation more calmly. Only then did Hank understand why he always felt that the steel mask protectors were extremely skillful. Furthermore, they had a deep understanding of laws, allowing them to control energy to reach an extremely precise level. On this point, even Sima Xiao, who was born in Heaven's Road, could not help but be moved. As long as the Sin Domain martial artists were able to overcome the discomfort of energy, even if they did not learn any Heaven's Road martial techniques, their precise control over energy was enough to completely defeat the Saints of Heaven's Road. What kind of people are they? Hank's heart was in a perilous state. Just as everyone was attracted by the unprecedented collision in the sky, no one noticed that Tang Tian, who was unmoving in the Forbidden Hoop's light pillar, suddenly blinked his eyes. If they lost, he knew what was waiting for them. With the Holy Bell's ban, Claudia would not kill them, but she would definitely break their limbs and slap their mouths. Too terrifying. He was definitely unable to accept such humiliation. On Macefield Trading's trading ship, the atmosphere was extremely tense. In the sky, the 100 men of the Iron Mask army were facing an enemy that was 5 times their size. The disadvantage in numbers caused the entire scene to be extremely bitter. But very quickly Hank frowned, because he suddenly realized that the Iron Mask Army's tactics had never been overdone. Damn it, it makes me want to go up and take a look. Hank's comrade beside him could not help but say. How can it be like this? That was where they were blessed by the heavens. If not for him personally witnessing it, he would definitely not believe it. Using training to replace walking, oh, Master actually allowed them to ride on the trading ship recently, he is too kind. Although the Iron Mask Army was few in numbers, they were extremely agile. They were like a group of agile and ferocious sheepdogs, coming and going like the wind, constantly weaving in and out. His own bodyguards were like a group of stupid sheep, constantly being chased around by them, unable to even touch the corners of their clothes. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Hank started to carefully observe the Iron Mask Army, and gradually his expression became serious. When Zhou raised his energy shield and rushed towards the enemy's bodyguards did not show any weakness, and similarly raised their own energy shields and rushed over. They had spent a great deal of effort to overcome the barrier of energy, but in the end they did not have any chance to perform. Basically, it was done by the master alone, and their usefulness was pitifully small, which was even more cruel than the devil's training. To him, there should not be any suspense in the battle, as the disparity in numbers between the two parties was too great. How many people does the Iron Mask Army have? Slightly more than 100. How many people did they mobilize? Full 500. It was a ratio of 5 to 1, 5 against 1. No matter how powerful the Iron Mask Army was, it should be enough. But why is the battle not over yet? This group of idiots. Hank was seething with anger from the clumsy performance of his bodyguards. Their reactions were slow, they were exhausted from running for their lives, and were completely led by the nose by the enemy. Hank felt that his common sense was completely toppled. He also trusted his own intuition because he had an abundance of battle experience. Reliable battle intuition was something that could only be formed by people who had been through hundreds of battles. It was more difficult to obtain than any martial arts or battle tactics, because it did not have any shortcuts. 500 against 100 and they were still unable to win. That was already inexcusable. Furthermore, their performance was so terrible, Hank had already decided to take care of them after the battle. Zhou and the rest did not know of Hank's worries, they were fighting excitedly. Ever since they left the Sin domain and entered the honorable martial continent, they faced a huge problem, which was to adapt to the energy-dense environment in the Sacred Saint Galaxy. The most important thing was to fight. The energy in the Sacred Saint Galaxy was too dense, and their previous fighting methods were completely inapplicable, so they had to make changes. Satisfying. Too satisfying. From the first day they left the Sin domain, the Devil's training had never left them. Alright, in truth, the Devil's training could be traced back to the formation of the God Armor Army. The Master was easy to talk to in other aspects and would give them whatever they wanted. But in terms of training he was a true tyrant, and along the way he had scolded them with his saliva, which was enough to drown them to death. At that time they could only fight it out. Even if they were to be punished by the temple or be wanted, they did not care. The members of the Iron Mask Army were all outstanding individuals. They were extremely fast, their movements were strange and unpredictable, and they would often leave after touching the enemy. They were extremely slippery. Their own bodyguards were not used to such a style of opponents. They could only focus on the front and not the back and completely lost their rhythm. The battle, oh no, the brawl made them extremely excited. They could finally have a good fight, but it was a pity that it was not a real battle and they could not enjoy it to their heart's content. Alright, no matter how small a mosquito is, it's still meat. But the harsh training allowed Zhou and the rest to get used to the brand new way of fighting, and they quickly experienced the benefits of this new way of fighting. Using laws to control energy, they realized that they were extremely powerful, so it turned out that their laws were able to control so much energy. Compared to the Sin domain, where they needed the law surface to project power, there was no need for such powerful laws here. A bit of law power was enough to control a large amount of energy, and compared to the Sin domain, the battles here were much easier. It was fine if it did not end, but what made Hank dumbstruck was that they were actually at a disadvantage. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.